Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Reading Room, back again for another debate dissection, and this time with my co-host, your friend and mine, Better Than Ember. Ember, how are you?
Hello. Doing a little bit better. I've managed to get, actual sleep the last couple of nights. I got some laundry done. It's great.
Wow. Wow. First world problems. Well, actually, that's kind of third world problem as well. So, no, I get you. It's rough being on the road. We appreciate everything you do. We appreciate, and Robin's in the chat, who's the other trucker that I'm very aware of that supplies our milk and does a fantastic job. So, big shout out to all the haulers out there. For some reason, we have a sub community in atheism of haulers. And I'm all for it, quite frankly. I'm all good with that. I think that they cop a lot of crap and they do an essential job. So, yeah, thank you all. And today we've got a follow up, kind of a follow up. There was the big debate dissection that put my channel somewhat on the map. Was the Tour versus
Professor Dave.
Professor Dave. Yeah,
Yeah.
Professor Dave. And that was an absolute garbage fire. It was a breakdown in all things intellectual and just from both sides, just sniping. And I think I've never seen a scientist that unhinged as Dr. Tour shouting clueless at a chalkboard. Oh, you've got a soundbite? Zero.
It's one of my favorite clips.
Yeah, it really was. I don't know if this breaks down at all. I have no idea. But this was at a university, and it was academic. So it's more of an academic thing. I'm not sure at all what happens, to be honest with you. I've got no idea. There was as I was telling you earlier, there was like a dinner in the middle of it. So I sort of cut that out, even though there was questions going on. It kind of, I don't want to sit here and watch academics, fine dine away and, discuss things. So I just took the sort of starting introduction and the ending summation. There was no real debate like you would have the back and forth kind of thing. It was a purely academic debate. But I think it might be worth seeing sort of, instead of going up against a YouTube personality, how Tour handles an actual academic, somebody who's proficient in the field, which is Dr. Lee Cronin, who he actually used in that previous debate with Professor Dave, with this famous tweet that he made.
Yeah.
So this is the author of that tweet. So Lee Cronin tweeted out, origin of life is a scam, or the origin of life research is a scam. And he sort of went on to, I think it was Friedman's show, and sort of said, hey, it was just tongue in cheek, but I wanted to prod the origin of life guys. I wanted to give them a motivation, but he really was joking.
Sure.
And I wonder if he's going to use it again.
It's the kind of thing we used to see in the sciences in the 19th century.
Sure.
I forget names off the top of my head, but yeah, scientists would they'd publish in like newspapers calling out competitors in the field in sort of a semi-serious but tongue-in-cheek way. Be like, oh, you think animals evolved? Well, prove it then, tough guy.
Right. And stuff like how the Big Bang Theory got its name was one of these attacks. It was, oh, you think there was a Big Bang that created everything, kind of thing. So that's how some of these things actually got their name. Oh, thank you so much, Robin. Robin, I'm not prepared for this yet. Hold it, let me get my thing. And Robin, thank you so much. Gifted one marker. Who got it? Who was
Binge
the
Thinker?
Binge Thinker was the victim. Well, congratulations, Binge Thinker. Enjoy your emotes. There are a few more there. So I'll do the tangent one because I'm going on a tangent. There you go.
Tangents.
I don't know why I love the sus one. I just love that one. I love that one so much.
It is all of the new ones are really good. I like those.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. I spent way too long working on them and deleted some of them, and I had to. So, like at the end of it, I just got Australian because sus just means suspicious in Australia. Does it mean that in America as well? Like if you say something's really sus?
Yeah, it's a lexicon, vernacular Gen Z speak. It comes to us from the game Among Us. I'm not sure how Among Us brought it, but yeah, it's
Oh,
pretty sus. Yeah, so
look,
it's a thing that people say.
that may have sort of reflected back from Australia, because Australians have been saying that for ages. Like that's completely sus, mate. It's sus, mate. Absolutely sus. Because Australians shorten everything that is long and they lengthen everything that is short. So but yeah, I'll get this up, and it starts off with and when I trimmed out the fluff from this thing, it wasn't actually that long. So hopefully we can, you know, get through it in like 8 hours or so. And I want to do my inset because I feel better with the inset. Can I put you up the top? No, I can't. Okay, that's okay. I like that. I like that view because you get to see James Tour in all his glory. All his he gives me Emperor Palpatine vibes. I've never met the man. I really shouldn't hassle him like that, but he really does give me Emperor Palpatine vibes.
A little bit.
Add a Y sound. There is no definitive rule for that, Al. I'm really sorry, mate, but there's also an O sound on the end, like Damo. Hey, Damo. So that's not a constant. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent.
More tangents.
More tangents. Dear. All right. Well, should we get this started, or have you got anything else to add? Well, what are you up to now? Because I know that you've been pre-recording and you've done such a great job having stuff on your channel. I've been watching things here and there in the background. But what are you doing now? Are you back permanently, or are you leaving us again for us to cry and weep?
Alas, I don't know yet. The future is uncertain.
Okay.
But I am taking the opportunity to try to build up some more content in case it's necessary.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Well, if there's anything I can do to help, do let me know. I really would like to. I'm not sure what I can offer besides some biting Australian sarcasm, but there's that, I guess. Hi, Nitty. Yeah. Nah, Nitty. Okay, let's get this started then.
We're just going to go through this. Let me give you a few definitions. Abiogenesis is the origin of life from non-living matter. To construct any convincing theory of abiogenesis, we must take into account the condition of the Earth about 4 billion years ago. Not my definition. This is from Merriam-Webster. Prebiotically relevant means that we are restricted to materials and procedures and conditions that might have been available on an early Earth. Nobody was present when life first began. So we really will never really know the answer to this. But
okay, well, that's kind of weird. I mean, the first two I do agree, although prebiotically relevant, there's some disagreement on what that means, because and I really wish Grayson was here. I did invite him. He couldn't make it. It would have been great to have Grayson here because he's a lot more experienced in biology than I am. I will concede that. But as far as I understand it, there is some disagreement with sort of, so when you say prebiotically, you're saying sort of before very simple cells, but there is some disagreement on what that actually means, like whether you can sort of count say protein chains as prebiotic, which they should be, but sometimes the creationists will sort of go, well, they weren't available. It's sort of, well, hang on a second. The hypothesis that Grayson introduced me to, and that's critical base theory. For those, I might grab his channel because he does a really good thing on the amyloid world, which is a fantastic way to sort of explain all of this. But I see a talking point already. Were you there? Is essentially the talking point.
I have that one. There it is.
Sorry, are you doing a bingo or something?
No, it's Ken Ham, the "Were you there" thing. That's one of his more common ones.
Right. So this is the thing. No one was present, so we'll never know. I think that's a bit sort of it's reductionist. It really is. It's sort of like saying, well, no one was there at the murder, so we'll never know who did it. We can sort of, we can put together at least a model of how we think and see what predictions that can make and sort of examine whether it is a good model or not. I really dislike the idea that if you weren't physically there, there's no way you can know something.
Yeah, there's a hidden assumption in there that there's multiple ways life can originate, and maybe that's true. We don't know yet. But if it does turn out that through once we have a viable chain of chemicals to protocells, and then we run various experiments, here on Earth, maybe on Mars, maybe on the Moon, maybe the ISS, whatever, whatever the control variables are that make it work or not, it may well be that there's only one way it could happen.
Right.
And if we can narrow it down to that one way, then that's the way it must have happened, because but we just don't know at this point.
We don't know, and that's the important thing. There is so much about this that we don't know. But Tuur's always been a proponent of close up the research, go home. We'll never know. We don't know. And really, I believe, and it's my opinion, that he has a religious belief that is interfering with his scientific rationality. He thinks it was God, and he doesn't want any other answer but that. And so he has been really vocal about closing up origin of life research because he thinks he has the answer. And to me, Tuur is emblematic of the problems that religion has, that once you think you have the answer, you don't investigate anymore.
In fact, you actively try to stop other people from finding the real answer, because his God has been reduced to this one little gap, and he is terrified if we take that gap away, his God will poof into nothingness.
Well, he kind of won't answer a lot of questions like age of Earth and evolution and things like that. He's very cagey when it comes to all kinds of things, but it really is origin of life that he's fighting tooth and nail against, which is kind of weird. And look, not to take anything away from James Tuur, he is an excellent chemist. Like, there is no doubt about his credentials in chemistry, but he has this one blind spot, and that is God. And he will not take any suggestion that an answer can be found.
That's not what we're seeking. What we are seeking is an experimentally verifiable hypothesis as to how life might have originated. Textbook characteristics of life are responsiveness to the environment, growth and change, ability to reproduce, have a metabolism and breathe, maintain homeostasis, being made of cells, passing on traits to offspring. Homeostasis is a steady internal physical and chemical condition. Professor Cronin, who's here today, agreed.
He's overstating things a little, isn't he?
No, I think that is a suitable definition of what is life, but the problem comes that you want life to come from non-life, but things like sort of protein chains and polypeptides and things like that, they're not life in themselves, but they are replicating, right? So they may fulfill some of the criteria he has for life, but it's not life itself because it doesn't have homeostasis, for instance.
The breathing too stood out to me. Like, he wants advanced modern life.
Yes,
not just anything that would. Yeah, and it is, in fairness, it is hard to define life. Like, there's 7 different criteria sets that modern biologists use to determine if a thing is alive. Yeah, some things fall into more than others. Like viruses, I believe, fit 4 of the 7.
But they're not alive.
Are they alive or are they not? Yeah. It's
they're not.
Gray.
According to the biological definition of life, viruses are not alive. That's the crazy thing. Although they do, propagate and they do all of these functions, they don't actually fit the category for life. So, and I love that you brought that up, Amber, because that's one point where we can go, well, they're replicating and they get selected for, and they obviously evolve, but they're not life, right? So Back in sort of the very, very early Protean Earth, something could be replicating and selected for and have all of these qualities, yet Dr. Tour wouldn't acknowledge it's alive. And how does it become not only, say, the sort of polypeptide formation and protein formation, but also how it becomes life from there? A lot of that's unknown. But you notice that,
But Tour likes to make it out like there's this magical jump that has to take place when really what all we're looking for is a viable start position where it can make a small step to being what we would consider to be a cell. Like calling life cellular, that's our arbitrary definition. We put that line there.
And it gets very fuzzy. Very fuzzy.
He's with me. He said, I'd like to ask you all a question, which is, what is the most basic unit of matter that can undergo Darwinian evolution that you know of? And I suppose it won't be much of a surprise to see that it's a cell. He further said, so what are the requirements of our living system? We need genetic code, we need mating, we need metabolism, we need adaptation, we need homeostasis. So,
well, that's Darwinian evolution. It doesn't mean there isn't some kind of selection process there. The strings of proteins, they can be selected for by only the ones that have integrity will actually survive, and then it will lead to homeostasis. That's the thing. Like, I think he's sort of taking what he said kind of out of context. That when he says, oh, well, the unit of Darwinian evolution is the cell, right? But that Darwinian evolution isn't every single selection process ever known. He's just talking about Darwinian selection. And Darwin didn't have an idea about stuff like recombination of genes, for instance, right? When a population gets pulled back into another population and the genes are recombined. It's stuff like this that you really have to read it charitably. And I don't think Tour is. I think that he's sort of, is that quote mining?
If not exactly, it's on the verge of it, because it feels like he's aiming for a gotcha kind of thing.
Well, Lee and I are in agreement here. I am not speaking of a god of the gaps. I think that we.
It's weird that you had to clarify that straight off the bat. Like, it's very, very strange.
Little telling on himself there.
Yeah, the lady doth protest too much, methinks.
Will one day find out how life began. But I don't think we're anywhere close, nowhere close. And how can I say this? It's because as we track the complexity of a cell and how close we are being able to reproduce this, build a cell, even mimicking what's here, what happens is every year the cell gets further away from us because its complexity increases with time. Not that it has evolved, but that we realize more about the cell and its complexity. So it moves way out here every year, and we might move a nanometer closer, and it's moving at a much further rate. That's how you can track that we're nowhere.
Yeah, but that's the same for a lot of things, like weather systems. We thought with the advent of a computer, we would be able to track and predict weather accurately. But looks like chaos systems, they're harder than we thought. But that doesn't mean to say we didn't get better at it. Like with the advent of computers, we definitely got better at predicting certain phenomena in weather. But we realized the system was more complex. Right, we realized it was way more complex than we first thought. So weather was something that we couldn't predict with any great degree of accuracy. But that doesn't, it's not the getting to a complete understanding that science does. It's the journey there. It's learning things along the way. So as we learn about these cells, we learn about life. It's very weird to hear a scientist say this. Well, it's more complex than we thought, so we're getting further away from knowledge.
Oh no, we have more questions.
Yeah.
How tragic. There's more things to learn. It strikes me as weird the way he did this with Professor Dave too, where he said we're nowhere close to having an answer.
Right.
Well, how is it helpful to say that? Are you trying to say we don't know so we shouldn't try? Like, what is the point of saying that?
Yeah. And that's like Origin of the Universe, for instance. We can't see that on the horizon. It is so difficult a problem, but that doesn't mean that we just give up. It seems very fatalist to say, hey, it's a really hard problem, so we shouldn't investigate it at all. Yeah, so I think Tua's sort of he isn't lying at all. He isn't, you know, lying in the slightest, but I think he is having this sort of opinion of, well, it's really hard. It's harder than we first thought. It's much more complex than we first thought. So it must be God, and it is a God of the gaps, regardless of what he says. Like, you know, doesn't matter what he says. That is God of the gaps. It just is. Yeah, Jordan, this isn't the Professor Dave one. I've already done that one. That was hilarious, to be honest with you. That was actually quite funny. But yeah, this seems like a bit of a more academic one. I'm currently on a bent of trying to find reasonable debates without people burning the auditorium down. So that's sort of what I'm trying to do. And I was sent this one, I think by Grayson sent it to me. I really wanted to get his opinion, but I'm sure he'll do something on it as well. And I did provide his YouTube channel.
Close to solving this. Chemistry is the language of living systems. We are not built out of silicon. We are not built out of transistors. We're not built out of carbon-carbon composite.
Maybe you could tell Kent Hovind that, please. Maybe tell him we're not cars. If you could, that would be great. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Materials. We are.
I'm baffled when people try to make that comparison. Like it's baffling. You know, and Sal and his so Tangelo and his molecular machine. Oh, we have machines, and it's like, yeah, they're using an analogy.
He does that too.
Yeah. Oh, it's sort of, yeah, you can call them machines, but they're not like our machines. Like, yeah, it's very, very strange to say so.
Built out of molecules. It is very hard to build out of molecules. There is a reason why that we don't build our robots out of molecules, because we don't know how to do it. There's a reason why we use cameras that have lenses.
We're working on it. We've gotten pretty close in a couple cases.
Yeah,
like that's exactly. That's what nanites are. Is just a molecule or two bonded together to perform a very specific task.
Yeah.
That are made out of glass and silicon rather than chemicals, because it's very hard to do this, even though we have ubiquitous examples around us in one another.
Silicon is a chemical. It's an element.
I think he misspoke. I think he meant organic chemicals.
Maybe so.
Yeah, I'm deciding to be charitable on this one. I think he probably meant organic chemicals rather than just any chemicals. No, I get what you're saying. Yes, silicate. Well, yeah, I mean, silica is an element, but yeah, you're right. It is part of a chemical structure, sure.
Yeah, because he's talking about how, you know, cameras, we build them out of silicon or silicone. I always confuse those two. But yeah, we've gotten down to nano machine levels there. Like most cameras available today from Sony, Lumix, Canon, Nikon, the photoreceptor sites on the sensors are something like 7 nanometers apart.
Wow,
it's crazy.
Wow, yeah, that's incredible. Oh, look, and you know, our technology's gotten really good. Life is one of those things that is so complex, and that's okay. It's okay, James. Don't freak. I feel like he's going to freak out like any second now.
You have to have the polysaccharides, polypeptides, polynucleotides, and lipids. These are the 4 classes of compounds, and you have to have the monomers that make them up. That's the language of living systems. But molecules don't care about life. Molecules have never been known to move toward life, ever. They don't do that unless there's a biological entity like a person pushing them along to try to do this. And
yeah,
it's a weird thing to say. That's like,
yeah,
you know, like living organisms, dogs, cats, us, who don't really care about evolution either. Like every living thing wants to live its life, carry out its normal biological processes, eat or create food, you know, get enough rest and reproduce, etc. but those behaviors contribute towards evolution. It's ascribing a desire to molecules seems really weird.
It does. And sort of selection processes aren't based upon the wants of a molecule. It's not based upon, like, as you're saying, like what we want. It's based upon natural processes. It's not, it's not based upon the desires of those things in the process. And sort of, we've never seen that as really bad, because he said in his presentation that we have to take conditions prebiotically. Prebiotically, there wasn't a whole bunch of life that will literally devour any protein that comes along. Like, if something does form, it will last a matter of nanoseconds before something eats it. Like, this is the thing. You can't say, hey, it doesn't happen now, so it didn't happen then. The biological landscape is so different than what it was back then. I don't know how you're going to take that out. It may just be the atoms don't care. Yeah, you're right. The atoms don't care. It's a composition division fallacy that sort of verging on it. It's not exactly, but it's verging on it.
Still, even then, we've not hit it. There are three basic approaches to discussing origin of life. In my opinion, this is my opinion. We force reaction chemistry toward life. And
so to the sort of YouTuber, when he's debating, he's saying, hey, this is fact, this is this problem, you can't overcome this. To the academics, he's like, this is my opinion, I want to make this clear. He's a lot more guarded in this one, because he probably knows that he is speaking to academia, who is sort of, they're not going to they're going to know that he's not telling the truth. Also, these problems are.
This took place after the Professor Dave debate, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
So it could also be that he got so much backlash from his truly reprehensible behavior in that debate.
That's true.
That he's being more guarded to try to, preserve something of a professional reputation.
I don't think it's going to work, but sure, to have at it, mate.
It's not working. Professors Eschenmoser, Sostek, Benner, Sutherland, Krishnamurthi, and many others, including the older work of Professor Cronin, have been trying to do this. Or you avoid reaction chemistry because they realize it's not moving toward life, and this seems to me to be more recent work of Professor Cronin, but he'll speak for himself in a moment. I suggest that we do not yet sufficiently understand reaction chemistry to see its projection toward life. There are enormous scientific mysteries yet to unfold. They may be 100 years, 200 years away, but we still have much more to learn about reaction chemistry before we can start seeing molecules move toward life.
Okay, but you said we would never know. This is very, very weird, because he's saying, hey, we might understand reaction chemistry 200, 100, 200 years. Well, how do you know that won't unlock origin of life research?
He's also ignoring that we're coming at it from two directions. We're not just trying to build from loose chemicals and see what happens and force reactions and try to get stuff to try to interact spontaneously with other chemicals and so forth and gradually build themselves up. We're also going backwards from modern life. We're comparing the genomes of every organism we can get our hands on to try to do what we've always done with genomes and trace back and find prior ancestors. Last universal common ancestors for these two groups, and then another group takes us back even further. And it's not only showing us more about how evolution spread out, but it's also showing us characteristics more and more and more basal, leading us towards what may have been the first. And we may not get there from that, because I don't know that there's enough. We've been through so many mass extinctions where we've lost 90+% of species.
It's that genomes only survive a certain amount of time. Like, we've got a problem with the preservation of those sequences. There's just that problem.
Yeah. We basically can only work with what's alive today, which is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of all life that's ever been. So we may not get all the way to the first organisms, but we're
Right.
learning more about what traits we might expect, and that can give us clues as to which molecules might do what. So we're burning the candle on both ends, and both sides are feeding each other, which is accelerating the process.
Professor Cronin's older work, he tried to make oligopeptides by some prebiotic-like route. It was a bunch of garbage. There was nonsense.
Okay. He failed to make peptides. What's your point? I don't know if you should be entering a debate calling someone's work garbage. I think that's pretty unprofessional.
I mean,
but this is the kind of shtick that James Tour does, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, if it failed, why would they publish it as if it didn't? And why is it only showing us why is James only showing us the title and the fact that Cronin was involved? And this is from 2015.
Yeah.
Surely Cronin's done more work since then, you know?
Oh,
what's going on here? It's a little sus, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, so he demonstrated programmable one-pot dehydration, hydration, condensation of amino acids, forming oligopeptide chains and about 50% yield. So the problem is that Tour's got this thing where he says it's got to be sort of 90% yield or more, 90-something% yield from memory. I don't know. He's just got this thing that most people will say, hey, the yield is fine for it. He disagrees. So I think it's something to do with I'm not entirely sure, but he will say this. So to him, that's a failure. And to us, it's getting closer to what could have happened, what a working theory.
Yeah, I mean, he being a chemist should know better than anyone to borrow from Andy Weir. Chemistry is a sloppy bitch. If you take 2 moles of hydrogen and 1 mole of oxygen and light a spark, you're going to get an explosion and you're going to get water, but you're also going to have a lot of unburned hydrogen.
Yeah,
it's no reaction in chemistry is 100%. I think in a organic sense, a 50% reaction success rate is actually pretty good.
Yeah. And that doesn't solve the problem of how life got started, but it's one step towards it. And maybe it's a faltering step. Maybe that the process needs refinement. We've got to find out more. But that's a big, long haul away from it being garbage, as he described. I just find issue with sort of the dismissiveness of Tour. But he's only like this with things that sort of show that life doesn't need a god. That a lot of it seems to be his personal bias, quite frankly, and it's kind of annoying. But Tour's gonna tour. That's what the man does.
It's there. And same thing with saccharides, because this is hard. You try to make these sugars. We made billions of compounds. It's very hard to do this. You try to push molecules toward life. They don't want to go. They don't know to move toward life. They have no brain. They don't want to evolve toward life. There's no impetus to do this. Professor Cronin's newer approach to describing the origin of life, he avoids the use of chemical structures and chemical reactions, the language. He avoids the language of chemistry. That is because to date, prebiotic reaction chemistry fights against the path that moves toward life. And I think he's seeing it. And I think Professor Cronin is more and more coming around.
Oh, but you're not going to speak for the man. This is the thing. He makes these statements, and they're clearly designed to just chastise his peers and sort of try and slap them down. He's been doing his YouTube shtick for far too long. I mean, I'm not going to say this doesn't happen in academia, but it's kind of, academics generally see this kind of thing as beneath them, calling others' work garbage, saying he has no idea. It's just, It does happen. I'll remind myself it does happen. I just don't like the way that he's talking about Cronin right now.
Around to my position, and we'll see that. Professor Cronin now speaks of the general primordial soup model, saying it's a good model, with no rationale for what makes it good and what chemistry is involved. I don't know if you know the primordial soup model where you have a pond, and in that pond are some molecules, lightning strikes, molecules form higher order structures, those form a cell, and those cells now form higher order structures, and you get creatures living in the pond. And then those creatures evolve, and they...
Fuck this guy.
Yeah, I think that's a gross simplification, but I don't know.
Yeah, it verges on straw man. Like, nobody has ever said you take a puddle of chemicals and hit it with lightning. Even Miller-Urey didn't phrase it that way. They took chemicals, they used lightning as a catalyst, but the idea was to produce pre-organic molecules, not poof, there's a cell. Holy shit, what a mischaracterization.
Out of the pond. That's the primordial soup model. You know where that came from? You think that came from Miller-Urey? No. You think that came from Darwin? No. That came from the Babylonians. And out of that pond where life came from?
The Babylonians?
What is he on about?
I am so confused. Babylonians? What Babylonians? What, back in like we talking Nebuchadnezzar?
I'm googling Babylonian primordial soup, and I'm finding nothing.
Yeah, it was first proposed by Alexander Oparin in 1924. Yeah, not sure the Babylonian Empire was knocking around at that time, mate. I could be wrong. What is he talking about?
Oh, I got a partial hit. I can't even pronounce the name of the thing, but it's from 2020, an article that says Ancient Creation Myths Through the Prism of Modern Science. And the headline is the Babylonian epic Enuma Elish is one of the oldest creation myths, and it can be said to indicate, with some interpretation, that the world was made from a primordial soup of elements.
Yeah, I don't think they were talking about the primordial soup model, mate. Like that, I think that's very, that's conflation. You could also say that, hey, you know, the Greeks believed in spontaneous generation, for instance. That's the same thing. No, it's not the same thing. What are you doing to her?
Came their gods as well. You want to take those? It's nonsense. He'll speak about bubbles. He'll speak about salad dressing.
Oh, I can hear the audience kind of go, hey, what the hell? Like, seriously, Tua, what are you doing? We can't equate primordial soup model, which we're not even sure is right, with a Babylonian myth and say that it's the same thing. Come on now. Oh, boy.
Lee Cronin said the most important thing he does in his lab is salad dressing. He'll talk about flipping coins, playing cards, royal flushes, the birth of stars and planets, anything but specifics about reaction chemistry, because reaction chemistry is really hard to push in this direction. Has the public been misled on the origin of life claims? Well, 1/3 of the public, and this is 80% of this public, had a college education, some level of college education, a college degree. 1/3 of the general public thinks that scientists have made frogs in their lab.
Who gives a fuck what the general public thinks? What are we doing here?
I don't know. It's really weird because, you know, 2/3 of the population in America believe that angels are real. So what? Has the public been misled? Not by the origin of life, people. They've probably been misled by you, who keep saying this stuff.
Just by putting molecules together and built frogs. 2/3 of the general public think that scientists have made bacteria in their lab, a bacterium. Both of those are false, in case you didn't know.
Well, that's not entirely accurate. We have made genetically modified bacteria. We didn't build them from scratch, but we have, there's even a term for it. We call them GEMs, genetically engineered microorganisms.
Yes.
You know, we do make bacteria. We just don't do it from scratch, you know?
Yeah, but he's not wrong. he's not wrong that people are misinformed about science, but the whole point is that people are misinformed about science in general, not just sort of origin of life. And origin of life doesn't get a lot of airtime. Like, they don't have a Neil deGrasse Tyson sort of, with stage presence going around and saying all this stuff. So,
yeah, and there's nothing flashy to it. There's nothing like
right.
Neil deGrasse Tyson can be like, oh, look at that supernova. Holy crap, what a big explosion. And now to wrap your mind around this, that explosion is the size of our entire solar system. With origin of life, you've got, hey, look at my goop, salad dressing.
Well, because there's mixed messaging from origin of life researchers. Jack Sostek, who many of you know, Professor Sostek, he said in 2014, told a Search for Life gathering of 50 on Saturday afternoon in New York that he expected to make life in the lab in 3 to 5 years and more likely within 3 years. That was in 2014. How's it going, Jack? I mean, it's a rough thing. It's hard to do it. He never succeeded. Dimitar Seselov, again, another Harvard professor, said that he thinks it'll take 5 years and not 3. That was in 2014. Professor Sostek then said in the University of Chicago in 2021, he said, we've not made the RNA. He said this, what's in italics here, but it's basically, he's not even made the RNA yet in a prebiotically relevant manner. It hydrolyzes too rapidly. That's the bottom line. That's the truth. Why does he tell the experts this and the general public something else? Steve Benner, former Harvard professor and now director of Foundation for Applied Molecular Evolution, said to a YouTuber in 2021, I suppose most of them, many of the big paradoxes in origin of life have been solved. Yet, in a professional meeting in 2019, he said, chemistry is actually hard to get to work. The molecules precipitate, the molecules hydrolyze, the molecules decompose. And so it's very much a constraint that you have to deal with. It's one goddamn problem after another. That's the truth.
Well, it depends what he meant by paradox, right? So just because something's a problem, you're conflating there, Tua. You're conflating a paradox with a problem, right? So a paradox is something that is quite literally unsolvable because logically, so something like which came first, the cell or the, sort of the things in the cell, right? You can sort of say, hey, it's a paradox. It's like a chicken and egg problem. That's what he may have been referring to. That doesn't mean that all problems vanish once you've solved the paradoxical things. So again, you're kind of misrepresenting things. And this might work on YouTube, but this doesn't work to educated people who know what they're talking about, because the paradoxical problems are the ones that say, hey, logically, it's impossible. And we've overcome those problems. That doesn't mean we've got all the answers. It just means the paradox has been solved. So I don't see those two statements as any way in conflict. It's just, again, quote mining.
Yeah, painting things badly. Like, to borrow from cosmology again, there's a famous paradox, Olber's paradox. If the universe is infinite, or nearly infinite, as the case may be, then why is the night sky dark? Every line of sight should end at a star somewhere, no matter how distant. So how could that be? Well, people pondered and came up with various ideas, like, maybe starlight dims as it's more distant, and maybe the starlight from the galaxies in the gaps hasn't reached us yet, and all sorts of things. And finally, when we finally got probes up into space, we were surprised at how much stuff was up there. Like, the interstellar medium is something like 10 hydrogens per cubic centimeter. It's not a lot, but it's a lot more than we expected. And there's other stuff out there too. There's, the tiny asteroids that are basically gravel. There's little flecks of things. There's dark gas clouds, like, so on and so forth. And so, the answer to Olber's paradox was there's stuff in space, mostly dust, but it blocks the light. So it solved the paradox because, a lot of these paradoxes, they're logic issues, and all they really show is that we haven't thought of what the correct answer is, not that there isn't a correct answer.
Yeah. Oh, and sort of, so just because you've solved the paradox, like just because we solved Olber's paradox doesn't mean that we've solved every cosmological problem out there. It just means that, hey, we've got a ton of problems, but this idea of, well, it's paradoxical, so we have to throw away that hypothesis, has been overcome. So nice quote mining to it's terrible. You're terrible. Like, this is the thing. I think he has been too long on the internet making these statements, sort of just railing against sort of origin of life work, and not enough time actually, because this is the kind of thing that works to the, tons of religious followers he has who are all following him. Oh, they said they solved the paradox, but they've still got these problems. And
yeah, it's so disingenuous. Like,
right.
If you don't like the field, go back to your field, work on your stuff. His stuff is good. His lab, one of his grad students came up with a new material that can repair spinal cord injuries. It's damn near miraculous. Go work on make progress, do good things. Why are you fighting against a field that you don't like? Except for fucking public clout. Like, look at me, I'm putting these pretentious bitches in their place.
No,
why?
I think it is
How does
religious
it help?
reasons. It's religious reasons. That's what it is. Like, that's why I had to put up a God of the Gaps in his presentation. It's because people damn well know that his objection is that we'll never find the origin of life because God done it. That is essentially where he's coming from, and he veils it so thinly. It's evident to everybody. That's why he has to put, this isn't God of the Gaps in his presentation. When God wasn't even mentioned in his presentation, he's like, this is not God of the Gaps. Yeah, you're showing your hand there, Jimmy.
If humans were meant to fly, God would have given them wings.
Right.
We'll never get an airplane off the ground.
Exactly. And think of all the failures in trying to make things fly. Him pointing out maybe Cronin's work was a failure. His earlier papers, maybe he failed to do this and that. It would be like somebody showing those rickety, half-formed idiot planes going off the edge and dumping straight into the ground and saying, look, we'll never fly. Look at all these failures. No, it's not a failure. It's just a step on the way to understanding. Oh, Tua, why do you do this? Why do you do this?
Professor Cronin at a TED Talk in 2011 said, what I'm going to try to do in the next 15 minutes or so is tell you about an idea of how we're going to make matter come alive. After the talk, Chris Anderson said, just a quick question on timeline. When you believe you're going to be successful in this? When? Lee Cronin, hopefully within the next 2 years. That was in 2011. So we're about 10 years overdue, and maybe Lee is going to tell us about this life today. Is it any wonder that the public has been misled on the current state of origin of life proposals? Who, perchance, might have misled them?
Well,
that's a stretch.
He might have a point. Like, you rarely get funding for saying, hey, I have no idea when I'm going to be able to do it. And their estimates may have been in good faith with what they understood at the time. Everybody, people probably would have said, hey, we're going to be flying within a couple of years. And it took a lot longer than that. You can't just turn around and sort of say, hey, their predictions were wrong about the timeline, so their entire field should be closed down. Like, what are you doing?
It's so disingenuous. Like, of course, hopefully within a couple of years. Yeah, like, okay, so in 2020, I filmed a movie. Everybody was not doing anything. Places were closed down, whatever. So I took the opportunity. I'd written a script. I got some of my friends to come act and so on and so forth. We filmed the movie. And the idea was to bring it out later that year. I was hoping to release it by October. Hopefully, I would have it done in time for Halloween. That did not happen. And I still haven't finished it. I'm still, hopefully, I'll get it done the next year. And maybe I will. But we can't predict the future. We can't predict what other hurdles are going to get in our way. In the case of the film, it's a lack of time on my part, because I'm always freaking working. And the CGI was harder than I anticipated. So you don't know what's going to get in the way. But if you say hopefully, that doesn't mean you're lying. It means you're hopeful you'll get some results.
And he's acting like this scientist, when he's pushed on a time frame, he's saying, hopefully, best estimate. I hope that this will happen. He's couching it with I can't be certain. Like, this is the thing. You're essentially you know, and don't forget that Tua's not working in this field himself. He's not working in this field. He's working in molecular chemistry. He's not actually working in origin of life, so he doesn't know what problems has come up.
What's the real state of the origin of life research? Here's the underlying theme of what you're going to see. Prebiotic chemistry, as we know it, does not move toward life. Nobody has shown the method to make these enantiomer molecules. You need carbohydrates, amino acids, nucleotides, lipids, these 4 classes of compounds. Nobody has ever made these compounds with the absolute stereochemical purity that's needed using prebiotic chemistry. Never been done. Nobody has ever shown
by
that
the
mixtures
purity. Biology isn't pure. Like inside our own cells, even today, it's just a freaking mess of lipids and proteins and loose amino acids and all sorts. What does he mean by purity? Purity is not a thing that biology really deals with.
Well, I think he's talking about that yield. It has to reach a certain point where it overcomes a certain amount of formation in order to get started. Now, I'm not a biologist. I'm not a geneticist. I'm not sort of that familiar with it, but I think that's what he's talking about. Nobody has shown that the mixtures in meteorites or interstellar space could be useful for synthesis. Yeah, but we've found like one of the components for RNA, uracil, in meteorites.
Mm-hmm. We found all the nucleobases in various locations, sometimes comets, sometimes asteroids. We found, I think, 26 of the necessary amino acids, and that's just for life on Earth. We don't know if there's different ways to do it. Virtually everything we need has been found in space.
Right.
But nobody is saying that the mixtures found on meteorites or in interstellar space could be useful for synthesis, because the reason we're only finding amino acids, nucleobases, and so forth is because that's as far as what's available on any given asteroid or comet can go. Yeah. It doesn't have all the parts of a full terrestrial planetary system.
Correct.
So of course we're not going to find the proper mixes. If they were there, then it would have gone further. Life would have developed into actual life. I think the first time we do find a full useful mix, it will be a planet that already has life on it.
Yes. And that's not to say that I mean, the mixture may not be there, but the components are there. So something could drop to Earth and feasibly bring something that was not in prebiotic Earth. And yeah, you might go, hey, you're kicking the can down the road, because then it's got to come from somewhere else, from asteroids or from meteorites or from somewhere else. And that's
I mean, technically, everything on Earth did come from somewhere else. All our heavy elements were formed in the heart of a star. The rocks that accreted to form the planet were asteroids at one point, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. But I'm inclined to go with Forrest Valkai's explanation on this one. The fact that these things can form in space means why wouldn't they be able to form here on Earth? We don't even need them to rain down from space. If they can form out in the frickin' vacuum, they can certainly form here as well.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
In meteorites or interstellar space could be useful for synthesis, because you might have 1% of the mixture being the compound you want and 99% other things. For those of you who are synthetic chemistry, you can't do chemistry like that without enzymes. It doesn't work. Even John Sutherland, the big origin of life researcher, says, these meteorites don't deliver anything that is useful because you need more constrained chemistry. Nobody has solved the mass transfer problem. This is a big problem. How much material do you need to go from A all the way to Z, the cell? How much material? You go through a synthesis, you run out of material. You got to go back and make more starting material. You've been going along now 400 million years making stuff. Now you've run out of material. Well, go back and make more in the beginning. I can't go back because I never kept the laboratory notebook. I'm just a dumb early Earth. How do you go back? How do you do this? Nobody knows how to solve this problem.
He's getting very worked up. I really think he should calm the F down. Seriously, this is sort of how he begun in the debate with Professor Dave. He kind of, he kind of got to the point of just exploding on everybody. Calm down, dude.
I think part of it is because he knows he's being disingenuous and he's angry about it. Maybe it's because he feels like he has to. Maybe he's rushing because he feels like he's going to get called out. But like that last piece that he presented, the materials problem, earlier on, he pointed out that the molecules and the atoms don't have any particular desire. But then when he just presented was as if there was a desire, a drive to reach cell status. And that, no one thinks that. Why would that be the case? Reaching celldom was not a goal any more than reaching humanness was a goal for evolution.
Right.
It's, you just work with what's available, and then when the next step opens up, you take it. And if it leads you towards becoming a cell, then wonderful.
Right.
But if not...
He thinks there is a goal. He thinks that humanity is a goal. That's the thing. That's where the religion kicks in, because he thinks that somebody put this together physically and had a goal in mind when they did it.
Yeah, I think he may be tipping his hand on that one too.
Yeah.
On the prebiotic route to polymerization. You can't hook the sugars together to make carbohydrates. You can't make polypeptides because of the side chain problem, and you can't make the polynucleic acids because of the 2,5 linkage and the branching problem. Nobody's made the polymeric systems that compose us in a prebiotic route. The carbohydrate, just think of it, six glucose molecules, molecules. How can you hook them together? A, for example. No, you can hook them together in over 1 trillion ways, because there's all these different tentacles of how they can hook up. Over 1 trillion ways to hook up just 6 glucose molecules. They have open form, closed form, they have the anomeric system. And so we don't know how to do this. You get the wrong polymeric structure, the cell will never get a chance to live. Every disease has a carbohydrate problem associated with it.
Every single disease has a carbohydrate problem associated with it. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, I don't have the sufficient background knowledge to fact check him on that one, but I can say that he's putting the cart before the horse yet again, in that while it's true that you can hook glucoses together in a number of different ways, this is one of the pre-evolutionary selection things, right? Like, if you hook them together in this way, it doesn't work. You don't get cellular life that way. If you put them together this way, that doesn't work. But this way, that one way in the straight line, like he showed, that makes it possible for the next thing to happen. So that's what gets selected for.
Nobody has solved the polymer stability problem when dealing with the single molecules. Time is enemy number one. And Martin Nowak helped me calculate this on the back of a menu about a year ago. And so
I'm sorry, did he say on the back of a menu?
He may have. I heard back of a napkin, but that's because that's a phrase people throw out, and I think that's just what my ears caught.
Stability problem when dealing with the single molecules. Time is enemy number one. And Martin Nowak helped me calculate this on the back of a menu about a year ago.
So not peer reviewed then. Was the menu sent in for peer review? Is that a peer reviewed menu or not? I want to know.
Did Gordon Ramsay approve?
Yeah. Oh, come on, man. You can't refer to like a calculation on the back of a menu. We want to know that this was actually peer reviewed by people working in the field. Come on now. What is wrong with Tua?
There's a lot of assumptions there too, if that's correct. First of all, you don't necessarily need a 600, I'm assuming that's 600 individual molecules hooked together.
Yes.
Of identical RNAs, so that's a reach. And assuming they have a half-life of about 100 days in water, at room temperature, are we talking saline water, pure water, distilled water, brackish water? I'm sure these things all factor in. Why at room temperature? What do we mean by room temperature? Are we talking, hydrothermal vent room temperature where it's over 100 degrees Celsius? Or are we talking, my room right now where it's, I don't know, maybe 50 degrees Fahrenheit because I turned my heater down so it won't be kicking on all the damn time while we're live here. And there's so many variables, and he's just like, oh, if we assume this and this and this and this and this, then we only have 4 hours to work with. Well, that's cool, but why should your long string of assumptions obtain in any given situation?
Don't argue with the menu, Ember. It's on the menu. Don't argue with the menu.
I would like to order a 600 polymer sample of identical RNAs.
Yeah,
And so if you have a mole of RNA, it has a half-life, say, of 100 days, which is pretty gracious to give it. That's 2,400 hours in water at room temperature. What if you have one?
Why is it in water at room temperature?
Right.
Why in water?
I can't frickin' I don't understand at all. Like, every organism that I'm aware of, I believe every organism we as a species know about, isn't using, like, there's salt inside cells in order to control osmosis.
Mm-hmm.
And so why no cell that we're aware of, even the most basal, exists in like just water at room temperature. And if you're dealing with like complex organisms like us, you've got warm-blooded and you've got cold-blooded. Cold-blooded ones would deal at room temperature, but we are not room temperature. We keep ourselves at our own homeostatic temperature. Tour's obsessed with homeostasis. I don't know if he's thinking the proto-cells must be, I guess, the bacterial equivalent of warm-blooded or something. But, like, room temperature does not work. Why would you do that?
I don't know. And you're assuming that wherever the prebiotic world was, it was room temperature and that water was present in this process. I mean, that means you haven't, like, you may be addressing the primordial soup model. Maybe that's what you're doing. Or hydro vents, maybe, but they wouldn't be room temperature either. That would be very hot. Like you can't just address one hypothesis and go, well, the entire thing's bunked. It's just one hypothesis. I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about.
It's a very complicated straw man.
Yeah,
happened to form to be just right.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, he's went and built his own hypothetical that's very specific and very obscure. Like, why would you even want a sample of identical RNAs to create a single RNA molecule? That's not how RNA works. There's a very high probability. We don't know for sure, but there's a very high probability that one of the reasons there are 4 different nucleobases is because having identical ones decreases the overall chain stability. Having variation makes it stronger. So if you have 600 A's in a row, it's not going to last as long as an A, C, G, T, etc. Or, well, U in the case of RNA.
Yeah,
but
RNA is U,
yeah.
How long would you have to use that? That's 2,400 divided.
It is very silly. I don't know where his assumptions are coming from.
Divided by 600 because it's 600 mer. That's 4 hours. You have 4 hours. So if the right molecule happened to form and to polymerize, you'd have to have very pure monomer, or else you could never get a 600 mer. And now all of a sudden, all the excess materials have to come out, and you have to get all 20 amino acids diffuse in from where? We don't know. It's an early Earth. It's a puddle someplace.
It's a puddle someplace. That's a straw man. Oh boy, that's a straw man.
And they have to diffuse in high purity. You have 4 hours. You can't even do that in a laboratory. How does that happen on an early Earth? Nobody knows. When you're dealing with one molecule, stability is a huge problem. You say a peptide lasts longer. It'll last 13 days if you have a 200 mer peptide.
Do you only have 4 hours, though?
This functional group side chain.
That's what the menu says.
Yeah, because he's using his assumption of half-life and times 600, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But do you have to do it that way? I don't think you do. They don't all have to snap together at the same instant. You could have 2 snap to each other, and then these 2 snap to each other. You could build a chain of 200 and another chain of 200 and snap those together. It doesn't have to all happen in the same freaking instant. There's no reason it should. There's no reason that it would. That doesn't make sense.
But he wrote it on a menu that was not peer reviewed, so it's got to be right. It's got to be true.
This kills off all polymerizations of amino acids to make polypeptides. Nobody solved that. Nobody solved the.
He went past that really quick. Didn't Dave say there was a paper that solved that side chain issue that he's been going on about? And the thing is, he wanted Professor Dave to write it on the chalkboard, and it is very complicated. Like, to write it up there would have taken the entire debate. This is the thing. He thinks that if you can't write it on a chalkboard, it's not true.
Although apparently writing it on a menu makes it true.
Oh, apparently so. If only Dave wrote it on a menu. If only Dave wrote it on a menu.
Code problem. What's the genetic code? How do you come up with the code for life? You have to have prescribed code to orient all these. Nobody knows where that comes from. Lee will agree. He's talked about this. What's the code? Where's that come from?
I don't think Lee would agree.
Yeah.
No, you do, there's no reason to think there's a prescribed code. If there were, how do you get evolution? If the code was handed down from some divine source or aliens or extra dimensional beings or whatever, why would there even be evolution? You just program in the code and go straight to humans.
Mm-hmm. And like, it's funny that he sort of said that this isn't God of the Gaps. Essentially, what he's doing is just pointing out things we don't know about origin of life. That doesn't invalidate any of the field. Yeah, no, Bruce, Flying Thing Wayne, like, seriously, James too is a chemist. He's absolutely a chemist. He's just not an origin of life chemist, that's all.
Nobody has shown that you can deal with
a black and white menu fallacy. Absolutely.
Yep, that's what caught my attention too.
Add a new fallacy to the list. We've got a new one.
with low enantiomeric excess molecules, and that somehow evolution they purified. No, because we know from a new phenomenon that's only about 20 or 25 years old, chiral-induced spin selectivity. This is one of those mysteries that pops up, only been known for 20, 25 years. We used to think enzymes are all hand in glove, it's steric effects that dominate this. That's only half the story. The other half is that every chiral environment acts as a spin valve and selects the spin. And that's why in nature, you can have two hydroxyl radicals can come together to form hydrogen peroxide, or they can go to form oxygen plus two protons, because they're going down a chiral environment. We never knew this. There's many other mysteries that.
Yeah, we learned something. Look at that.
That's, I know. I'm like, oh, that's why there's chirality. Cool.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, we learned this by studying the origin of life. This is the thing. Like, just because there's problems doesn't mean that you just pack up the entire field. We're learning stuff. See?
Yeah, like even if it's true that we never solve origin of life, we're learning useful science that can be applied to other things. Even if we don't, like, it's like with the space program. We came up with so much unrelated stuff that has demonstrably made our lives easier. Memory foam, Velcro, the freaking modern pizza oven. None of this helped us get to the damn moon. Well, okay, Velcro did. but you know, when you're working on a big problem, you learn a whole bunch of shit you didn't even know you didn't know along the way.
But that doesn't matter. We're never going to know. Pack it up, go home, boys. Whatever we discover isn't, any relevance. And this is the stuff that he likes to parade. And let's be honest, it's because of his God belief. It's because he doesn't want there to be any solution to the origin of life besides one. There is only one solution he will accept, and that is God done it. That's the only solution he will accept. No matter how close we come, or even if we find it. I feel like this guy's going to be, a guy denying the truth until his dying day.
We're going to have to solve before we can get this thing solved. Nobody's explained the requisite protein folding. You've heard about protein folding. How does a protein fold properly without other proteins working on them that are these foldamer proteins acting on them? Just even 100 residue protein has 10 to the 95 possible conformations. If you're over 10 to the 40th, there's not enough time in the universe anymore. So that's the Leventhal 1.0. Leventhal 2.0 is a problem where you have what's called the interactomes. This is the non-covalent, just the association interactions between molecules in a cell. Information travels down that through electrostatic potentials. the estimate for a single yeast cell of just the protein-protein interactions, not protein DNA, not protein RNA, just protein-protein, is 10 to the 79 billion. This is a crazy, crazy big number. Total.
Oh, big number. Big number.
No.
Yeah.
It's true that you do get electrostatic potentials between molecules and cells, and you can use that to communicate information. But the fact that there's many possible combinations, not every combination produces a meaningful result. Most of it is just static. It's background noise. So you can have the biggest number you want. It doesn't mean anything. It's like, 99% of our radio dial is static. But that doesn't mean that when you tune in on a specific frequency, your favorite radio station, assuming you still listen to terrestrial radio, or to get the weather, whatever, that doesn't mean you'll never find a signal. Because it is where it works. Oh, tour is hurting my head today.
And that sort of randomness, it only is that combination random if it is random. If there's a selection process involved, then you can throw that out the window, tour. You can just throw it out the window. Because if there is a selection process involved, then it is not that number. It's just not. It reminds me of those people saying evolution isn't true because, the chances of the eye developing by chance is, X, Y, Z. But it's like, no, it didn't develop by chance. It developed by small steps that were selected for, not chance.
Inaccessible. In a million universes, it's inaccessible.
You're not on YouTube, tour. You're in an academic sort of hall. Try to conduct yourself with some fucking dignity. Oh, it's beyond him, isn't it? Like, really.
All of that information goes from one cell to another when it divides and divides and divides, and that information is passed down. How do you come up with that? We don't know. Nobody has ever made any of the higher order structures needed for the simplest cell. They say, oh, cells were really simple back then, really simple. How simple were they? Well, biophysicists have calculated this, of the minimal complexity you could have in an initial cell. You had to have DNA replication, repair, restriction, a basic transcription machine, and all of these things. And the cell wouldn't be able to make
on.
But that's for the simplest cell, not anything before then.
That's not even correct. For the simplest cells don't have DNA. They have RNA.
Correct.
They're simpler than that. Wow. It's just,
but
it's so...
He's talking about prokaryotes then, isn't he, with that?
Eukaryotes, I believe. But...
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's so... It's like saying, we're trying to learn how to build a house from scratch. How did the first house get built? Well, if you can't build a 5-story condominium, it doesn't count. Like,
a house needs
you ever heard
of a tent?
Yeah,
house needs a garage and a balcony and a doorbell and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
no.
Electricity and running water. No, the first artificial dwellings didn't have any of those things. What are you talking about?
Any of its amino acids, you need 20 amino acids coming in exogenously. You know how many of these origin of life researchers have made in a prebiotic fashion? 0, none. Nobody's ever made any of them.
0.
Oh, he said it.
Yes. Yeah, this is the shtick that he does. He yells and screams, and it's so hard to take him seriously. This is supposed to be an academic presenting to the rest of academia why he has problems with a field, and he's grandstanding. Like, you've got to know your audience, sir, and in a college campus against a YouTuber, maybe you can get away with that. Yeah. This is shameful. He just is unhinged.
How close could we be? Nobody's ever come close to synthesizing or even suggesting how to synthesize the simplest of cells in a modern laboratory, let alone in a puddle. You can't do it in your modern lab.
Again, with the straw man, and you can't. Just because we can't do it in a modern lab doesn't mean it didn't happen. That's the thing. We also can't do all kinds of things in a modern lab. We can't create a star in a modern lab. We can't, you know, there's a ton of stuff we can't do in a modern lab. Doesn't get you any closer to a god doing it, champ.
Yep.
So how did it happen in 100 million years, which is from the cooling of the Earth after the late heavy bombardment to where we see life?
Well, it's nice to know you're not a young Earth creationist. You know, it's
there's that much at least.
Yeah, give. I wonder if he actually believes in evolution, because I've watched a bit of Tour and he never answers the question. He gallops away from that question. So, I actually wonder what he believes. I'm not trying to put words into his mouth, and I'm not trying to say, hey, he doesn't believe in it. I just really wonder.
Or even if you can take any chemist, any biologist, anybody, and say, okay, we just deconstructed a cell. We have a bottle of each one of the components of the cell. Here's the polymer, so you already have the code. Can you put this thing back together in a cell for me, please? Huh? No, you can't. Nobody knows how to do this. And you peg them down and you say, can you do this? They won't answer you. They won't answer you. And remember,
that's aggravating. Okay, so 7th grade biology. We had slides. And we had little samples of goo with amoebas in them, and we put the amoebas on the slides and looked at them under microscopes. And then our teacher went by and handed us these tiny little micro needles and said, "Poke the amoebas." And what happened was the cell membranes ruptured, and all the inner material spilled all over the slide. It's like the destruction of the cell membrane. I mean, all the materials were still there, but it was now a dead amoeba. He's asking us to take that dead amoeba and in the lab, put it back together and make it alive again. He's literally asking for a resurrection to prove the viability of this science. Like, why are you like this?
Yeah. Crazy.
No answer is an answer in itself. I put before.
Probably because your request is kind of absurd. Like Ember said, it's like sort of, you know, you basically killing someone in front of a doctor and saying, hey, can you restore them to life? Well,
If
maybe,
not,
depends.
We know nothing of medical science. We know zero about medical science because you can't do this one ridiculous thing.
Oh, Mike Johnson is the US Speaker of the House of Representatives, and he's a young Earth creationist. Oh, that is frightening. Holy crap.
It really is. And
my.
He's worked for Answers in Genesis. I don't know how the fuck he got into Congress, let alone got picked as Speaker, but it's scary.
Control the House? Is he a Democrat? Have I got this wrong? Have I?
No,
who
it's
controls the House?
Currently Republican, but and yeah,
wow.
he is a nominal Republican. Americans are stupid and are easily persuaded to vote against their own interests. But yeah, I'm just like, the odds of him getting like real power are still low, even though Biden could go at any moment. Camilla's relatively healthy, but it's just for him to be that close to real power. What the fuck?
No, Joel's right. He's second in line. First in line is the vice president, and then the second in line is the Speaker of the House. That is correct. Dems control the Senate. Wait, wasn't it the other way round just a little while ago that the Republicans controlled the Senate and the Dems controlled the House? What are you guys doing over there? Like, seriously.
Culture wars.
I mean, we have occasional... Yeah.
Ken Ham is helping with that. Like, that's his whole thing lately, the last several years. I've been watching way too much Paulogia lately because... Okay. Yeah.
Hey, don't have to apologize for that at all.
Yeah, just a little bit of background. I've been watching a lot of the older ham and egg news, and he's gone more and more and more from we need to start with a biblical foundation to as Christians, it's our sacred duty to eradicate the gays and the transgenders and the brown people and things. We need to restore this white Christian nation to racial purity. And I'm like, what are you doing, Ken? Holy crap.
Mask fell off. Yeah, I've got to get back to Ken Ham and really, really roast him. He claims copyright on everything that he can. It's kind of really obnoxious, you know. But yeah, that's Ken Ham for you.
For 10 researchers, these 10 researchers, Lee Cronin being one of them, I said, could you just solve these 5? I put before you just 5. Just make a polypeptide, not even a polypeptide, make a dipeptide. Just hook 2 peptides together, make DK a 90% yield in prebiotic fashion.
See, there's the 90% yield that I was talking about. He thinks they have to be 90% yield, and that is really contested that 90% yield has to be there. They think they can get away with 50% or 60% yield kind of thing. So that 90% seems to be a thing that Tour, you know, is he kind of dies on that hill that it needs to be 90% yield, and I'm not sure why. But then again, I'm not a biologist. I'd love to know why it has to be 90% yield, because in the Tour versus Professor Dave debate, there was a paper that said that 90% isn't necessary for what they were doing, and he had this paper that said that I can't remember the yield, but it was way lower than 90% was fine. And he sticks to this 90%, and I'm not sure why, but you know, obviously people in the field disagree with him. So yeah. But it's kind of like that thing where you sort of go, oh, well, I'll give $10,000 to anybody that can prove the flat earth wrong kind of thing. And then you just make the criteria so ridiculous that no one can approach it. It sounds like that to me. That's just my opinion, but that's what it sounds like to me, because he's kind of made this thing.
Make a polynucleotide, make a polysaccharide, just 2 glucoses hooked together with the right chemistry for me. What's the origin of specified information, and could you assemble a cell? You answer any one of those 5, I will shut up for the rest of my life concerning origin of life and the
I fucking will
believe you. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You'll just
the origin of specified information. It just right in the middle of his thing. Also, intelligent design is real. Okay, that's way more scientific than origin of life research. I totally buy that. For fuck's sake.
That's what they're working on, though. This is exactly what they're working on. But you're sort of saying, show me these things and pack it up and go home. Like, we're not on your timeline, James. We're not working to what you think we should be at. As you've said, we've made discoveries as we're going along.
Problems with it. I'll leave you guys alone. I sent it to them. I said, you got 60 days to solve this. Just solve one.
Oh, 60 days. You're so generous.
Oh, that's all. Yeah.
In 2 months. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so confident that humans will never fly that I'm creating a challenge, and in order to win my challenge, I'm gonna put $100,000 in a briefcase in New York City, and the first person to make it around the world in 80 days will get the prize. I messed up the plot, but you get the point.
Yeah, no, I get it. Look, why don't you send something to the cosmologists going, unless you solve the origin of the universe in 60 days, I'll go away forever. What the hell?
It does. I do have to give him some credit for being slightly more self-aware than the average apologist. He knows everyone wants him to go away.
Yeah. A tiny bit of self-awareness there that you're very annoying. But yeah, this isn't being a scientist. This is YouTube grandstanding. That's what this is. That's all that this is. It's grandstanding. It's basically going, oh, you've got a challenge, 60 days or you fail. That's why you should pack up your research and go home. Come on, Tour. This is not good, mate. This does not save your reputation at all. It kind of makes it worse.
One of them, and I will shut up. None of them sent me anything except Lee, and I'll show you what he sent me. Steve Benner said, oh, I could solve that in an hour. I said, why don't you come to Harvard? And every one of these guys was invited here to this event to speak. None of them took it except Lee Cronin. Steve Benner said, no, I don't have time for that. I said, Lee, I will fly to your institute in Florida. You come and tell me. He said, my health and my time won't permit it. I'm flying to you. So Lee Cronin wrote to me, he says, hi, Jim, I don't agree with the questions. The emergence of life goes way beyond these narrow questions. I don't agree with the questions. Well, you just had a paper I showed on peptide synthesis. You just had a paper on sugars. How could questions 1 and 3 be irrelevant? I mean, you have papers on them. And then he addresses questions 4 and 5, information and cell. So he goes on Lex Fridman's podcast. And I want you to listen to this because Lee sent out a tweet that says origin of life research is a scam. Lee, our next speaker, sent this out.
Okay, so this tweet is the crux of James Tour's arguments. Basically, he sent out a tweet saying it was a scam. It's ridiculous. Like you are being so uncharitable with your explanations, kind of thing, right? Like,
and here's what he says when Lex asked him about this. He says the scam is if we just make RNA, we've got this. Let's now make another molecule and another molecule. How many molecules are going to be enough? I mean, Lee is sounding like me. I mean, he's complaining about this origin of life research. And go back to Craig Venter when he said, I've invented life. Not quite. He facsimiled a genome from an entity and made it in the lab, but he didn't make a cell. He had to go back and take an existing cell that had a causal chain all the way back to Luca, which is the first universal common ancestor cell.
No, it's the last universal common ancestor, but details.
Yeah. No, he obviously misspoke, but yeah. No, I get you.
I think Lee has been born again. He's just talking, just like me.
Born again. Look, for someone that says this has got nothing to do with religion, you're using a lot of loaded language for religion. You know, you brought up God of the Gaps when it really wasn't relevant, just to say you weren't doing it and then proceeded to do it. So his thing is evidently on display. Now he kind of ends
what
there.
I'm going to try and do is actually give a talk that's explainable to our audience. Okay, so I didn't come here to kind of.
Thank you, thank you. As sort of a dumbass, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Lee Cronin.
Make radical kind of claims and think about this in some kind of argumentative way. But let me address a couple of things. The paper being garbage is kind of without actually digging in and explaining, is probably a garbage statement to make, and we shouldn't do that in science. We should probably say, well, perhaps this is lacking this.
Yeah, like show us specific criticisms.
Yeah. This paper is garbage. Is as he said, a garbage statement. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've been to scientific conferences. Like I was at one in Albany years ago, where they were talking about the use of telomerase, I believe, as cancer cells reproduce really, really fast, and reproduction errors tend to snip away at the telomeres and eventually start cutting into functional genes, which even though cancer cells are messed up, they still need functional genes in order to keep the metabolism going and so on and so forth. And so cancer cells reactivate the gene for telomerase to rebuild their telomeres. This is a gene that you have for when you're going through the fetal process, from a zygote to a gamete to a blastosphere and so forth, because in that stage your cells are reproducing so fast. It's the same problem. You're snipping away at your telomeres and starting to cut into the genes. So the idea in this particular talk was to create a retrovirus that would insert itself into every cell in the body, including the cancer cells, and basically do half a CRISPR. It would isolate the telomerase gene and cut it, so that the cancer cells wouldn't be able to produce telomerase, wouldn't be able to repair their telomeres, and would burn out. It would effectively sterilize the person as well. But if you're in stage 4 cancer, and your options are never have children or die next week, you know?
Yep.
But
absolutely. Or if you're past, 50, which is more likely to have cancer, then that's a perfect solution. Like you're not going to be producing children at that point anyway.
Yeah. And so a person came up and was addressing the talks, they were like, well, how that you know, it's pie in the sky sounds wonderful, but how do we specifically do it? Like, how do we create a retrovirus that does this specific thing and doesn't do anything else without predictability? So that's how it's supposed to happen in scientific conferences, is you bring up specific criticisms of what the person is saying. You don't just go, oh, this is garbage. That's not how it's supposed to work.
And look, I'm sure Tour could have brought up specific criticisms. The paper was from 2014, don't forget. I'm sure there is more we have learnt since then that he could criticize that paper. But that, you know, it is just sort of soundbite YouTuberism that makes him go, oh, this paper, I'm sure he will have shorts up with him going, oh, this paper is garbage kind of thing. Because he isn't trying to appeal to the academics. He's trying to appeal to his audience. And that's the problem with Tour. He is now a apologist rather than a scientist. And it's sad because he was an excellent chemist. He'd actually done some really good work in chemistry. He invented some process that was just incredible, you know, like...
It's really sad. Like John Sanford, you know, he invented the gene gun, which it just nobody saw that coming. It was just out of left field that it actually worked. He had so much potential, and then he was, you know what? I had a God moment, and I just bloop, and away went all my science. Oh, it's tragic.
It really is. Yeah. So he carbon materials was Tour's focus. He did conductive inks for radio frequency identification tags, carbon nanoreporters for identifying oil downhole, graphene synthesis from cookies and insects, graphitic electronic devices, carbon particle drug delivery for treatment of traumatic brain injury, merging of 2D graphene with 1D nanotubes to make conjoined hybrid material. Like, he's done all of this really amazing stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Like, this is the thing. And I'm not, I think Wayne said he wasn't a chemist. Yes, he is a chemist. Yes. And I'm not picking on you. It's just, it is tragic to see somebody rail against a different field because it interferes with his personal beliefs when he could be such a good scientist. And if he just focused on his work, or if he wants to join that field, that's great. But you've got to leave your God belief at the door. I'm sorry, mate. You have to. Because that is bias. And he shows it all the time. He's just biased.
All right. That reminds me to put my clock on. So thank you for that. Because I don't want Dave dragging me off. And so what I'm going to talk about is, and I will take Jim's challenge that you are going to understand what I'm talking about. That's the point. And the point is to have a civil discourse. I thought I was going to have this one turned on because I don't want to talk into this one. So can you turn this one on, please? Is that okay? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Otherwise, I'll stand there. Great.
Yeah, so Lee Cronin likes to walk. I've learnt this now. I can tell. There's speakers that like to walk. They hate standing microphones because they like to walk around. I've seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really want to make sure that we understand what the problem is, right? I am a chemist. I also do computer science in my spare time, a little bit of robotics, want to be physicist, want to be mathematician. But on my table, there are a couple that might keep me straight. So what I'm going to talk to you about tonight is how life got assembled, or why we think that the only way that life could come into being, as it were, naturally is for
I love this production value. I'm just going to say, like, why creationists can't use design function on PowerPoint is beyond me, but they can't find the button. It's crazy. But this is so much more pleasing to the eye than Tour's slides, because you can read it. It doesn't, like I said this recently on a comment that creationists PowerPoint slides look like websites from the 1990s kind of thing. Like, they really do.
Process assembly. I remind you the heliocentric view of the universe that Galileo kind of had popularized an instrument that helped us look in the universe in a new way. I want you to think about how we need to think about things differently. And Jim's right. We mustn't think about what happened as a historical experiment. Take our sun. This is our sun. Imagine you could look up in the sky and you could only see our sun and no other star. You would obsess. Where did it come from? Why was that mass? Why did that flame do this? Why did it do that? Why did it blink? But really, we need to understand not the origin of our sun, but how stars form in the universe. And how, indeed, if you look up in the sky, and if you're lucky enough, you'll see them dying and you'll see them being born. So one of the things I am really trying to do is step away from this historical argument, because I want to make progress in my lifetime. Yes, I admit 2 years is a little bit too quick, but Elon Musk has been promising self-driving cars for ages now. And some of you might drive Teslas, okay? So we will make progress, and yes, we are not perfect. In science, we do make claims that need revising. But the thing to think about is, do we exactly say how the sun got its mass, its precise composition got started, or do we ask, how do stars form? What is their temperature? What is their color? What is their luminosity? How they'll die? Now let's tackle the next argument. All the problems that Jim talks about. Yes, we can solve polypeptide formation. Yes, we've got a board here. We can go up and we can talk about the chemistry, but we need to talk about constraints. Now, Jim, in the panel debate, I will predict, will talk about what a great chemist he is and use the kind of humiliating way that chemists can occasionally say, did you not remember that? I'm going to tell you how I can profess better than you. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you clearly what the problems are and bring you along with me. And if you can agree those problems and we can solve together, then we'll make progress together.
I love this. I absolutely adore this. It's, yeah, there's massive problems. I do not refute anything that he's saying, but just because there's massive problems, why are we talking about like they're insurmountable? All problems are insurmountable, right up until the point where you surmount them. Like, you know, I get that. It's, but I love the way that he's not attacking Tour. He's not calling his work garbage. He's not, you know, he's basically elevating the conversation, and I, for one, love it. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, I especially like the call to action where he's like, let's talk about the problems and then let's come together and work on them instead of just bitching about them.
Yeah. And demanding researchers shut down into them. How about we acknowledge them and say, hey, they're massive problems. Let's solve them together. I love this approach. It's wonderful.
I don't think Origin of Life is a scam. That was a joke. If you can listen to the podcast, and it's not just a joke. It was meant to prompt people to say, hey, Origin of Life has made fantastic progress. Shostak in RNA, Benner in looking at complex systems, Pauner, Sutherland, all these people. But I think they're thinking.
Okay, so this is when sort of, you know, as I said, Tour's not in YouTube anymore. He's up against a guy that knows his field. This is an expert in his field. I think what he's doing is amazing, that he's sort of saying, hey, we have made progress. And Tour himself pointed out part of that progress when we realized chirality and how it factored in. You know, like, this is because of the research of these people. Yeah, has it produced the results you want? No. Have they been incorrect in their assessment of how long it would take to solve these problems? Yes. No one's arguing that. Doesn't mean a God done it.
Quite in a very particular way, and there's a broader picture. That was what I was meaning. And it's really important that we have a wide church when we're pre-paradigm. If you go back to the time of electricity, when the voltas and the amperes were having an argument, when Edison and Tesla were trying to work out what the best way to distribute electricity, it was not a clean progress. It was lots of argument, but I'm trying to keep my voice low. I guess your eardrums have already been rattled a little bit. But where did the watch come from?
Wonderful. Wonderful. He points out that, hey, you know, someone just yelled at you. He's keeping that sort of, you know, performance that Tour did, which was very aggressive, and he's keeping it fresh in their mind. So he's coming at it from a scientific rationale of let's work together. I love what he's doing here. It's really, really good. Just from a debate perspective, he's countering the extreme aggression with building bridges and sort of, you know, making him, you know, a peace offering kind of thing. It's very, very good. I really like what he's doing, because science is at its foundation cooperative. Nobody, you know, or very rarely do people discover things by themselves. It's all built upon prior knowledge and your peers. I think Cronin realizes this. I think he knows that this sort of rhetoric about, you know, your work being garbage and is worthless is you know, not scientific. It just is not, and he's playing upon that. So I love it, quite frankly. I think it's wonderful.
Come from? Where did the cell come from? How do we explain these phenomena? There's so many problems. I think we're looking at it all wrong. What we can see, look around you. Look at your glasses on the table. Look at the cup. Look at the knife and fork. These objects did not spring out randomly. They were fabricated. They were fabricated by human engineers who evolved on planet Earth. Everything you look around you is a product of evolution and selection. There is no magic printing press, right? If you go all the way back to, if our reality, God forbid, got destroyed in some way and we had to recreate the silicon fabricators, would we go back to the Stone Age? No, but we would have to recreate the machine that made the machine that made the machine that made the machine. That is not a problem. It is an opportunity. And one of the other things I should say is
So he's talking about memes. He's talking about memes, ideas that are propagated. And even more, he's talking about engineering, the evolution of engineering. Like we engineer a primitive machine and that engineers a more complicated machine. That allows us to make a more complicated machine, which is a really interesting thing, because he's right. At the end of the day, we have evolved to use tools. So that is kind of like an evolution. I do like what he's doing here. He's sort of saying, hey, if the universe, our entire civilization was destroyed and we're roaming the wasteland kind of thing, we would be asking, wait, how do we put together an iPhone? It's so complicated, right? We have no idea. We can't do this. But what we've got to do, I think he's saying what we've got to do is we've got to start with, well, let's make stone tools first. And then let's make, with those stone tools, make this other tools. And then, from there we can make, mechanical tools, then electronic tools, and then we get to the iPhone. So I think that's a good analogy, that we're trying to say, hey, how did the iPhone just pop into existence from nothing? And there's a long chain that we don't know about that we have to find out. So I do like this. I think that he does have a point. And with that, all of Tua's objections are still very valid. We've got these problems, how did copper suddenly form itself into these circuitry? Well, we don't know.
Yes.
Like, we have no idea. Like, just say civilization's been destroyed. It's 500 years later. We've got no idea how bits of copper in the ground suddenly became this circuitry in the iPhone. We don't know.
It must have been magic. Yeah.
Must have been God. Yeah. No, must have been. And that's the problem.
Yeah. We actually, blacksmiths on YouTube have become somewhat popular. A lot of people like to look at how things were done in the old days, and how if we were reduced to a more primitive state, like big solar flare knocks out our power grid or whatever. Right. What would our options be? And some of the guys, they only like do certain things, like forge swords from fantasy movies or whatever. But some of them, I can't think of a channel name off the top of my head, but I have seen it in the past. They show you how to start. They're like, okay, you come into a new village, you want to be a blacksmith, but you have nothing. You have to begin. The first thing you do is build your forge.
Yes.
That's just rocks and wood and create heat and so forth. Figuring out where to get raw materials, that's a little bit trickier. Are you in an Iron Age village, a Bronze Age village, whatever? But the hardest ore that you can get, you need heat, you smelt it, you purify it, you create a mold, you make your anvil. Because you need that anvil to make everything else. Yep. And you build upward. You make a hammer, and then you start using the hammer to make more complex tools, and so on and so forth.
Tongs and things like that. Yeah. And it's a perfect analogy. And sort of, so a lot of comedians done the thing of, well, what would happen if all of our technology? Like, I don't know how to make anything. I don't know how to put anything together. You're right. And even the people that do know how to make things, they they only know from a certain point onwards. Like, for instance, somebody that makes iPhones or designs iPhones, they only know with the circuitry and stuff and the capacitors and the diodes and all of the transistors and things like that onwards. They don't necessarily know how those processes are actually, like, there's a lot of stuff that we've built off knowledge and built off knowledge and built off knowledge. And so that's what he's saying, which is beautiful. I love his analogy here.
I'm an amateur, Jim says I'm a bad chemist. I'm an amateur philosopher because I want to learn how to think. And I really think the problems are a sign of where we can make progress. And I've come here today not to argue with Jim and to make grandstand, but just say, hey, there's some really cool problems. We should try and solve them.
Oh, I love that he identified that. Yes, he was grandstanding. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I love his approach. And he called it out. He is grandstanding. His whole thing has been grandstanding.
Because from new problems come new ideas and new progress. So we really need to think about this carefully. The telescope and the microscope. I mean, the telescope is a good example. The microscope was horrifying when they were looking at these little creatures and what was going on, and it was scary, right? And yes, we can be scared, but we are moving into a transition here. And there is this great perceptual filter that when new technologies of perception emerge, they allow us to see more of reality. Now, assembly theory is just the first step. Now, okay, Jim, you put up some, you picked a handful of complaints about the paper, but the paper is one of the most engaged with. It was only published on the 4th of October, had 2.3 million interactions on Twitter, had a couple of 100,000 downloads, has provoked discussion. And the thing is, it could be quite wrong, but maybe it's less wrong than some other approaches. That is science. I'm not coming here telling you that we've solved the problem. I'm coming in saying we need to look at the problem in a new way to make progress. And I think that's an important thing to say. So let me give you one of the first things I'm trying to say. It looks like evolved objects are bigger in time than in space. The thing is, when you see the glass, you know that glass had a lineage of glass blowers going all the way back, and it went back to humanity being emerged. So when Jim was saying, well, I've just made this thing out of time, no, I'm just saying things took time. Why I think it's not relevant to look at the origin of life is I want to accept that chemistry, and I am a chemist, chemistry does not take billions of years to produce a life form. Evolution takes a long time, but the reaction chemistry seems faster. So there's a quandary here. So I figure that in my lab, maybe it's not 2 years, maybe it's not 5 years, but we should be able to create the conditions where we start to see selection and evolution before biology. And all I'm trying to say to you today is, if we weren't invented by if we're not in Elon Musk simulation, he would be nice.
Yep. He's got a basic understanding of philosophy. No, I get you. I'm an amateur philosopher myself. So, yeah.
He's absolutely right. Like, reaction chemistry is much faster. That's all that's happening here is reactions, controlled reactions, which the fact it can happen that fast, like that's not just the thought process in my brain being carried down through the nerves and so forth and being transmitted to the muscle cells, but they receive a signal, then what happens? Well, you have to have controlled, coordinated, fast response molecules inside the cell to receive that signal and bring ATP to the little walker. I forget the name of them from a few months ago, but the molecules that move the packets around and cause the cell to contract, all in synchronization, and it's all reactions. Mm-hmm. And it's fast.
Yeah.
Damn, it's fast.
Me than this, right? I mean, okay, you guys be nice, but if we're not in Elon Musk simulation and we're not some other fictitious creation, then there is another process that's going on, and we are pretty good at coming up with fundamental new explanations when we find problems. So
the problem is that James Tour does think we're a creation. That's the problem.
Problems are something we should embrace, not shout at relentlessly to say everyone's an idiot. We need to think, well, we're a problem, how do we solve this? What's the best thing we can do?
Yeah, and I agree. Like James Tour shouting at people and saying, hey, you're an idiot and your research is it's not helpful. It's not helpful. It's detrimental, and it lowers scientific progress to a point where, maybe they'll never find it. Maybe you're right, James Tour. Maybe they'll never find it. But we live in a history of scientists trying to overcome challenges that other people said they wouldn't solve. That's what I think one of the most wonderful things about humanity is, that we'll attempt it even when it looks hopeless. That has been the history of our species. It looks hopeless. We'll never cross the oceans. We did it. We'll never fly. We did it. We'll never go to space. We did it. Our entire species has been one hopeless endeavor after another, and somehow we're here.
Weird.
Yeah, because we just try.
Well,
and
yeah,
thank you so much, Robin. Sorry, I'll just quickly do this. Thank you so much, Robin. Gifted a membership and it hit Sabracadabra. Not sure they deserve it, but sure. No, I'm joking. Totally deserved, mate. I totally deserved.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, in a way, it seems like it's a reach exceeds our grasp kind of thing. We go, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could fly or cross an ocean or go to the moon or figure out the origin of life? And we have enough technical proficiency that we can reach towards it, but we can't grasp it immediately. That's all of our greatest accomplishments are figuring out how to get our grasp to get out to where our reach is. If it's easy, it's not a struggle. It's not a major accomplishment. Nobody writes books about it, you know? There's no histories of the discovery of how to get to the moon or any of that sort of stuff. But in a way, we're kind of dicks. Like, when somebody says, oh, you can't do that, you can't go to the moon, you'll never get through the Van Allen radiation belts, it kind of spurs us on a little bit more.
And I think that's what Lee Cronin was trying to do when he said origin of life is a scam kind of thing. I think he was trying to say, hey, you'll never solve it. And to make those people go, well, we've got to think completely differently about this. We've got to you know, get out of the box and take a new approach to it kind of thing. I really think that's what, and you know, the man himself has said on multiple occasions a joke, but Tour keeps using it, and it's really disingenuous and dishonest to do so. You know, it kind of reminds me in our sort of little community where I mean, Grayson was talking to Donnie, and Donnie said, oh, yeah, we're just making up this God thing. We don't really believe. I honestly, he said he was being sarcastic. You know, I think that's perfectly fine explanation. I've been sarcastic about things. You know, I call myself a NASA shill all the time. You know, like why I would project that onto somebody else. Like, I would rather give them the benefit of the doubt that if they say they were being sarcastic, then that's probably what was happening. Because people do that all the time. You can't just take what somebody says out of context and just say, oh, well, they meant that. No, you don't know that for sure. Come on now. Let's be fair and reasonable and give people the benefit of the doubt. Because, you know, I'd hate for someone to go, well, you said you're a NASA shill, then, you know, you admitted it. And I'd be like, oh, come on now. Get out of here. Seriously. So yeah, I think I to be honest with you, I really like Lee Cronin's approach. I think it's amazing.
This is important. There is a problem of what it exists, and of course, I think I have some ideas, but I think there's all these people working in origin of life and chemistry in good faith who are working really hard and making progress. They're making progress in a relatively narrow confine because they want to ask, what is the chemistry required to make RNA? How do we get to pure sugars? How do we get to chirality? All the hobby horses Jim has talked about. And the answer is constraints. Those constraints come from the cell. Ask yourself, how many constraints do you need to make something happen? This is what we're going to talk about for the next 12 minutes. There is a problem of what it can exist, right? I would argue there isn't just the existence of a satellite. If you went to an alien world and you found TikTok, you might found a new intelligence. I'm not sure how intelligent, because I'm not sure how good TikTok.
I'm not sure you'll find intelligence on TikTok, quite frankly. Let's just throw some shade at another media platform. Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
Sorry, all those TikTok users out there. Look, I haven't done TikTok. I'm really worried about sort of what the people that own TikTok are doing with all the information about people. So I don't go on it because it is run by the Chinese state essentially. But sure, TikTok's great.
But here's the thing that first really big kind of point I want to make is that although space is big, combinatorial space is bigger. And the reason why I think life might have emerged in chemistry is that the first time the universe was able to make combinatorial things was in chemistry. Can we do it in the fundamental particles that give matter? No. There's 25 particles, you don't have much to play with. Can you make life on the sun? It's pretty hot. All the memories are gone. So it seems that chemistry and kind of contingency that we would say are required for evolution, some dependence on the history, can be nicely start to kind of borne out. Now, when I came into this field as a chemist, I just said, hey, are there molecules that I can detect in my lab that I know have come from a biological lineage, made by humans, made by cells, made by bacteria, without any other information? And I developed with my team a new approach to counting those bonds. Jim talked to the graphs in the Nature paper saying these are, this is just nonsensical. They're graphs, mathematical objects. They're not schema. I didn't say in the legend they were reaction diagrams. That's a massive misquote and a disservice. Writing a paper in Nature requires that you interact not just with the chemists, but all the other really smart people who want to understand what you've done, as well as the generalists. So dressing it up in this kind of hierarchy of you don't know what you're talking about and intimidating you into not thinking is not the way I do science.
Nice.
Nailed him.
Yep. Absolutely
intimidating people into not thinking. Oof. Mm-hmm. What's this button do? Oh, okay. I'll save that for tour. Yeah. Yeah. Because that's just it's so great. He was making me think earlier when he was talking about different perspectives and the way we see what we expect to see, what we have around us, so forth. And the way he was talking about paradigms earlier, it makes me wonder, like, what if we're a little too myopic on this? What if, I've railed before against how arbitrary it is to say that it only counts as life if it's cellular life. Well, that's the way it did happen on Earth, but maybe that's not the only way it could happen. Like, what if we go to another planet and find non-cellular life? Could there be such a thing? We don't know. Amazing. We haven't even looked into it.
Yeah, I mean, Tour will probably say turn the spacecraft around, pack it all up. It can't possibly. Yeah, I'm being very, very uncharitable, but Tour annoys me. So, Tour should be encouraging people to solve these problems, not advocating for nobody's going to solve them kind of thing. Like, if be a scientist, not an apologist first. Tour, seriously, take a leaf out of, say, a whole bunch of other people who are scientists first and apologists afterwards. Ugh.
And I suggest we should not do that here. We should ask ourselves, what are the questions? So, space is big, it's pretty big. Combinatorial space and chemistry is bigger. What did the physicists do? Did they shout at each other? Well, they do actually a bit. But they did something super cool. They basically said, well, we're going to basically search for the origin of the universe in the lab. We're going to build an atom smasher. We're going to look at the fundamental particles. And I think that's Atlas. I think it's Atlas. Yeah. And we found the Higgs. One of the most amazing things we could have done. Now think about this. A few years ago, using LIGO, we detected gravity waves. Those waves were produced about 2 billion years ago. So for us to detect those, I think they were black holes that collided. That event, we had to have an origin of life, like human culture and intelligence, blah blah blah, technology, IBM probably, build a detector that then detects something that went like a couple of billion years ago. That's just amazing that we were able to use our technology to delve back in the time that far. So can we do something in chemistry? Does that require a shift in our paradigm that isn't shouting about where is that circumstantial? Who did it? It was Professor X in the garden with a chiral peptide that spontaneously emerged. Maybe not. Maybe let's ask the question in a little bit more of a falsifiable way. So this is what we're trying to do.
Yeah. It is a bit more helpful when you can, test things and either verify or falsify. It gives you useful information towards a direction. Yeah. I'm loving this presentation because he's absolutely right. We look into the things we can look into and then use those to look into additional things, like our own Dr. Tapioca Weasel. His whole thing, Praise the Weasel. His project is derived from that LIGO project. He's doing the coolest shit with using lasers to cool down atoms to, as I understand it, the eventual goal is to build an even bigger gravitational wave detector. And it would be so freaking cool.
Yeah. And LIGO was incredible. Like, if you don't know LIGO, it is an amazing experiment. And you know, so this whole thing about black holes and cosmology, you know, Tour isn't railing against it because it isn't in conflict with his personal beliefs. That's why he's not complaining that it's taken so long to get to the origin of the universe, because it's not in conflict with his personal beliefs, and that's the problem.
And I make, I don't, I'm not ashamed of not knowing the answer. Why would I be here to know if I didn't know the answer? It's a very important thing that we have to try and figure out. So what we wanted to try and do is say, can we search for the mechanism of selection outside of biology in the lab? So the second big thing I want to say today, that Jim says I'm going to confuse you. No, I'm going to say, hey, either the watch made itself randomly, God, some other designer, or this watch was made by one process and one process alone. So selection and evolution. The watchmaker was evolved, were they not? Yeah, good, right? The watchmaker learned to make watches in stage, different sophistication of watches going all the way back. The lineage of watches, the sundial, you with me? We can go back. So the watch didn't just appear, it required information in our culture, teaching people mathematics, how to machine metal, how to basic calibrate. There was a longitude prize in UK. We need to make sure our boats go around the world and come back. We don't care about whether God made the watch. We just want to come back from the East Indian Trading Company with our tea. Thank you very much. Okay, we want to understand it was a technological driver.
So what he's basically saying is that when you're talking about the watchmaker, and look, it's a watch, like you have a cell, you don't go, well, what's the one process that made that watch? That isn't the story of how to make a watch. It's, people figured out sundials, people figured out, basic mechanism, and then you go all the way up to quartz watches kind of thing that measure the vibration of quartz. And then you go to atomic clocks, which measure the phase transitions of quantum particles. Like, all of this is leading up to what is a clock, right? So when you look at the watch, his point is that you're not seeing one process. And I think he's trying to apply this to the very basic cells as well. When you say, hey, there's the first primitive cell, it's not what one process created that cell. It's what are the vast amount of processes that all contributed to that cell forming. I think that's where he's going. Would you agree?
Yeah, I very much. He's so excited. He's kind of shotgunning the concepts, birdshot all over the place sort of deal. Yeah, it seems to be the thing where he's saying it's not, there isn't one single thing that did it. Like, you can't, the specified complexity of the information. Like, yeah, if you have a blueprint for a Rolex and you have the proper machinery and the proper materials, you can just build a Rolex. But we didn't start there. I mean, just, I love watches. I love clocks with all the tiny little gears and things, the way they interact, the way they work. It's very fascinating, but there's so much more. There's how did we come up with the concept of measuring time, of allocating it? We have a 12-hour system based on the old Babylonian number system. Same thing with the 360-degree circle. So there's that weird little bit of history thrown in. There's so much development in material science because, before electrical batteries, we had to use mechanical batteries. We used springs. Well, what do you make the springs out of? Some of them lose their shape really easily, and you have to replace them every few months. Some of them hold a whole bunch of kinetic energy in storage and release it very slowly, particularly if you've got your gears set up just right. It's so fascinating. And Tour is just like, well, if you can't build a Rolex, it doesn't count.
Right. Exactly right.
So what we want to try and do is make a planet simulator. I wandered into the field relatively innocently, and I like making provocative statements to get people to think, not to get people to shout at me until they're hoarse. But that's okay. That's fine. Each to their own. So, but before we do that, we're like, life is what? This is one of the best memes from that Nature paper. We're like, so there's like this guy showing it to Donald Trump going, evolutionary biologist, what right now? And this paper.
Scientists have grappled with reconciling biological evolution. There's a little note there, possibly a citation, with immutable laws of the lawgiver defined by physics.
I got it. Scientists have grappled with the reconciling biological evolution with the immutable laws of the universe defined by physics. But these laws underpin life's origin, evolution, the development of human culture and technology, yet they do not predict the emergence of these phenomena. Evolutionary theory explains why some things exist and others do not through the lens of selection. To comprehend how diverse open-ended forms can emerge from physics without an inherent design blueprint, a new approach to understanding and quantifying selection is necessary. We present assembly theory. Okay, so that's an origin of life person presenting him with assembly theory. I'm not sure. That might be an in-joke for origin of life and evolutionary biologists. Okay.
Where's Bundy when we need him?
I know, right? I've got a feeling Grayson would probably understand this as well.
It was quite interesting because it did cause questions. People did get angry. But don't worry, Jim, it wasn't just Hector. Evolutionary biologists were unhappy.
Oh, I think he's talking about his paper, which caused a lot of controversy recently. So I think he's talking about that paper.
Physicists were a little bit unhappy. Prebiotic chemists were unhappy. Computation unhappy. But then when the creationists got unhappy, so it wasn't creationist enough, I was like, my job is done. Take a day off. And that was probably.
And then on the seventh day he rested.
On the seventh day he rested. When the creationists are angry, you know you're on the right track. It's about that's true. That's true, Lee. I got you, mate.
A little bit of a low joke, but it was like I needed some laughs. So what are we trying to do with this paper? What does assembly theory actually do? So assembly theory tries to explain how selection is the driving force that produces proto-evolution outside of biology. Selection is the force that produces the star. Well, what? Well, if you think about it, how's our star form? You have hydrogen, as hydrogen collapses under gravity, increases, and you get detonation, and now explosion, sustainable star. So that were the kind of the forces that produces fusion in our universe, right? Magic a few hundred years ago. In fact, the first reason, so biologists need to teach physicists a few things, right? If you go back to Darwin and the origin of species, he realized that actually he needed more time than was allowed for evolution. And Kelvin at the time, Kelvin was a Glasgow University professor, calculated the lifetime of the sun.
It was about millions, wasn't it? It was in like 100 million or so was Kelvin's age of the universe.
I'm not sure.
I think Kelvin had it about 100 million because he did sort of the very first predictions on the age of the universe.
Okay, he estimated age of the Earth.
Okay.
But he came up with between 20 million and 400 million years.
Yeah. And Darwin sort of said, hey, it's got to be longer. We need more time. We have to have more time. And he was right.
Oh,
Kelvin
yeah. Well, Kelvin, his estimates were based on a very shoddy thing. Apparently, it was the heat loss model. Kelvin working in heat. Go figure. Yeah. He started with the assumption that the Earth formed as a completely molten object and calculated based on present day rates of thermal venting how long it would take for the uppermost surface to form into the crust that we see today.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're not going to get super accurate numbers out of that one specific thing.
Correct. Yeah, and Darwin was right. The Earth was a lot older. He was right.
It's about 6,000 to 8,000 years. He was like, but then he realized he had, and so he just dismissed evolution. It's like, nah. But actually, what he should have said is, oh gosh, when I estimated the lifetime, I made the sun out of coal. Clearly more time was needed, and there's this entirely new energy source we had no idea about. This is when problems don't match up. This is what gets me excited as a scientist, because I can see the discovery is about to come. So let me try and teach you assembly theory in a non-patronizing, non-shouty, normal way of saying, let's have a look. So assembly theory is actually very simple.
He's really taken some swipes at Tur, isn't he? Like, just offhanded. But quite frankly, with the way that he kind of behaves, he kind of deserves it. Like, if you want to be a shouting, you know, horse, yeah.
It's about the possible formation of objects. Assembly pathways start with a basic set of building blocks and allow joining and reuse. It's about like you give a child and say, right, start here. Let's just take abracadabra. I'm going to give you the letter A, B, C.
Yeah.
It's magic. Behold.
Magic. Let there be light.
D and R. Please make abracadabra on a graph by using the letters going one at a time, and you can reuse any memory on the graph. So you go A, B, R, A. So you make abra, and when you go on, you're like, you've got abra on that graph. You've made it. You somehow have a memory of abra, and then you go down and you make abraca, and you're like, oh, I've made the abra before. I don't need to spell it out again. I just add it on. So it's not compression like Hoffman encoding. It is actually built, okay, from understanding you have an object at the beginning, and you do things, and events happen, and there is a memory trapped on that line. And that is assembly theory. It's not hard, okay? And you can do that, again, with graphs that look like molecules. These are not reactions, they're graphs. You can do it with blocks. Now, I'll introduce the assembly equation. You'll have to read the paper. The paper is actually, I'm very proud of the paper. It was a great team effort. We tried our best to make it legible. You will be able to know your name at the end if you read it. It's not that. I trust you, you know, it will be fine. The assembly equation is this quantity called assembly, is actually, you can calculate to tell you the amount of memory that basically has gone into, or amount of selection that's gone into making a thing. It has three things I should tell you about. It is the complexity of the object, and it is this. This is the next simple thing. If you take an object, cut it up with a pair of scissors in your head, you can cut it up to basically minimize the reuse on a graph. Abracadabra, just remember that, put it on a graph. You then count how many copies of the object you have, and the larger the number of copies and the larger the assembly index, the more you're sure it came from evolution. That's the basic premise. Now, the other thing, so Jim was saying, oh, it's not correct. We can actually measure it. This is when I was like, oh, we can physically measure it without any mathematics. We can go and do molecular spectroscopy. We can do a thing called infrared, shine light on it and count the number of bands. We can do mass spectroscopy, cut it up into blocks, and we can do NMR. 3 independent techniques, and we're able to measure assembly index. So apparently we can't find life, and NASA doesn't like it. Well, we took a load of samples, including dipeptide.
He's really talking fast, though. I wish I didn't. I did speed it up a little. It was at 1.25. I kind of wish I didn't, because he is going a million miles an hour. I get that it's very complex kind of thing. It's a lot easier to point out problems in origin of life than it is to explain them.
Yeah, all the ideas and references are great. Like, it just randomly throwing out, NASA's pissed about this. And that's true. We keep sending detectors to Mars to go through the soil and look for this possible evidence of ancient microbial life or this possible evidence. And every time we send a detector, it comes up with nothing. But that doesn't mean that we won't detect something else with the next thing we send up there.
Right.
It's foremost, Millayuri, E. coli. We took Glengoyne. I like that whiskey a lot, near my house. Ardbeg, beer, yeast, Taxol. We took these samples, and even samples that NASA double-blind.
I bet you didn't think that the beer conversation in side chat would somehow relate to this presentation, but it did in some weird way. It's they actually have one for beer.
Lee did admit earlier that from a certain point of view, it's in its fledgling infancy, but we do have the ability to see through time now.
Yeah.
Blinded. They didn't tell us from life or not. And basically, we cut them up in a mass spectrometer and counted the number of parts. That's all we did. Blind samples. And what we found is that basically everything that's from life has more than 15 parts. So we found a way of detecting life on Earth, at least. And it started to play with this thesis. So we now start to have a detection process for life. So this means that we can start with a problem and then come up with a theory, an experiment, and then get an explanation. This is what we need to do in science. It may not be the right explanation. And yes, I'm trying to put myself out there for criticism, because we are not going to make progress. Concrete experiments and concrete questions that get concrete criticism can get better or be killed. That is the process of science. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, to be killed. Well, no, hopefully not die, but, start a new theory after the old one. Yes, we're building robots in the lab. We're building robots lab. Yes, I'm a chemistry professor, and I'm building technology that will not only make new robots, but make new drugs. And we are making a chemical search engine for assembly. And yes, it's not just with the molecules. We should be not moleculist, right? It is about salad dressing as well, because the way that life is formed through embodied objects that survive in the environment, I think life starts macroscopically, objects that survive, persist in time, and then go out the other way. I need to finish right now. This is the Lego guide to assembly theory. It's pretty simple, and I thank you very much for your time, and pleasure to be here.
Lego guide to assembly theory. I think I want to read that.
Yeah, absolutely. When he brought up the Lego cell, I was like, ooh.
Yeah, like a you know, a Lego structure doesn't just, you don't do it in all one hit. It comes together in parts, and then those parts are put together, and then those parts put together. It's
pretty brilliant, actually, to show how it would work. It's like we were talking about earlier. You don't have to put all 600 MERS together. Like you build one wall of the house over here and one wall of the house over here, and then you put them together and put a cross beam, and so on.
Yeah.
And
so in between this cut was for the dinner. The dinner was sort of people on a table asking Lee Cronin and James Tour questions. I cut it out because I figure I don't want to see people eat while asking questions. But this is a panel discussion.
Glad to see everyone here, and I'm particularly grateful for Jim and for Lee for being here and to discuss this topic. The question I would like to ask is the following. This is a roundtable on science and religion, as you told us.
Yeah.
And rather appropriately, you pointed out, and both Jim and Lee pointed out that.
So there's a roundtable on science and religion. So religion, I guess, hasn't been brought up or discussed or mentioned in any way. Yeah.
Religion was not involved in the work, scientific work. It was science only, which is great. However, I think the vast majority of our society, and most of you perhaps, are interested in the implications of scientific study of the origin of life. What are the implications on religion? And so I would like to ask both of you, Jim and Lee, to comment on your personal opinion on what do you think are the implications of origin of life research on religion?
I can go first if you want.
Go ahead.
So I think it goes broader than religion. It's about culture, and I'd like to expand it to say humanity is interested in what we are, what life is. We want to know if we're alone in the universe. We want to know if there are aliens. We want to know what's the future of life on Earth. So I think it's not just about the religious implications, about the implications for humans as thinking beings, understanding the place of life and how special or common we are in the universe. So I'm not an expert from thinking about religious point of view, but I do detect when I talk to people, there's a strong wish to understand, have meaning, understand the future of our culture and going forward. We have all this technology, human races by some degree doing brilliantly, by other degrees doing badly. So I think I like to discuss this idea about what will happen if we are successful in the laboratory in creating artificial life or alien life, and if we might actually come up with a key to unlocking the detection elsewhere. What will that do? Look at all the
Well, that's true. I mean, yeah, but when you talk to the average Christian, average theist, I get what he says, but the problem is the fundamentalists. The fundamentalists believe in the story of their book or their holy book or their religion or their religion's dogma, that which has been handed down by religion as fact, regardless of what science or any evidence says. That's the problem. And most theists are not fundamentalists. Most of them are not. It's just we encounter them a lot, don't we, Ember? Because we are in a sphere that seems to have attracted the fundamentalists, and they're very loud, incredibly loud. So, that's what we do. We counter these fundamentalists, but try to listen to people like Lee Cronin, who is quite frankly doing a marvelous job at including everybody in this journey. Like, we're talking about having a story, like science doesn't have a story. And I pointed out people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who tells these wonderful stories about scientific progress and humanism and all of these things and humanity working as one. And I think Lee Cronin, I'm going to put in that camp as well. He's kind of telling people about this emotionally connecting them to this search that we're on, kind of thing. And I think that's a good thing, because as I was discussing with Christopher Maldi, some people need that. They need an emotional connection to these things. And religion's really good at doing that. It is.
Yeah, that's a thing. I have many thoughts, but what comes to top of mind is this principle in, I think it's sociology, but maybe it touches on anthropology, that people in general, and some specific people more than others, feel this need for a narrative. They have to have a story to live within. And the idea of breaking their story, even if you replace it with another one, it's terrifying. And so they cling to the story that they've got, especially if it promises them things like everlasting life and whatnot. But I think a big part of the issue here is the questions that this panel is dealing with go so far beyond the scope of religion, because most religions, not all, some of them are much more open-ended than others, but the main ones, the ones that tend to breed fundamentalists, they're mythology. They cover three main questions: where did we come from, what's our purpose, and what's our destiny? And these questions go so far beyond that it, in a way, it could be terrifying to somebody who's only thought in terms of, what is my purpose? What is my destiny? Where did I come from? It's almost like making a child become aware that other people are people too for the very first time. And it's a shock for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think that sort of with my discussions that I've been lately, I think that religion provides a lot for people's needs as far as safety and security and purpose and all of these things, right? It provides for those needs a lot. Whether or not they're true is another story. So a lot of people are very attached to them because without it, they feel like they don't have a purpose. They feel like they don't have safety and security. They feel threatened. And so we do get these emotional reactions from them.
Kind of excitement with the UFO files coming out of the Pentagon. Look at all the discussions that people have. This yearning for more kind of understanding.
Yeah, I don't think the UFO files are what people think they are. They're like, oh, the government has acknowledged there's aliens. No, they haven't. No.
Well,
the worst one I saw was James W. over on Amy's channel was going on about aliens. I went, oh. You know, for some people that pride themselves on skepticism, I really, I really think that's terrible.
Well, yeah, that's been a common misconception for as long as I can remember. Like, I've seen UFOs. I've seen things in the air that I couldn't identify. It doesn't mean they're aliens.
Correct.
No, I personally think they're. At least the ones that truly
UFOs anymore.
Yeah, they're like UAPs or something like that.
UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. Yeah, because
the
fact that they're flying, we don't know that they're flying. They're just airborne, kind of thing.
That is a solid distinction, because if they are, whether they're from another planet or time travelers or from another dimension or whatever, if their technology is not all that much more advanced than ours, they could have a non-Newtonian drive system of some kind, which means they aren't actually flying, they're just ignoring Earth's gravity field.
Well, that's a weird distinction. Or it could just be, swamp gas, like ball lightning. That's not flying either.
About what life is. And I think it goes beyond religion. I think religion is a great way to express that yearning, but I don't think it's confined. So I would say that I thought a lot personally, philosophically, that it's not just about having a defined religion allows you to ask this question. I think it opens up a bigger narrative, and which is one of the reasons why I wanted to take part in this, because I don't think we should be, separated from it.
Okay, well, for me, my faith in Jesus Christ means more to me than anything. I love him so much.
Okay, so here we get to the crux of the problem. His faith in Jesus Christ means more to him than anything. So that is the problem. That's his confirmation bias.
Mm-hmm. I've been away from my buttons too long. It's taking me way too long to find the one that I want. It's around here somewhere.
I'll give you all the time you need, my friend. I think.
There we go. Facepalm Jesus.
Yeah. All right, facepalm Jesus. Yeah, Jesus. Jesus commands you to think for yourself.
And from what I understand of the scriptures, it is clear that all things have been created by him and for him. You don't have to know him in this sense to do science. Many great scientists have no faith in the Lord at all. But what it does is it gives you a greater appreciation, I think, that the scientist has when they behold these things that other people have never really seen or been able to ponder before. And all the generations that have gone before us, to think that these interactions are occurring. And so for me, when someday we figure this out, how life can come about, I think it makes the Lord all the more magnanimous in my eyes.
I don't know if this is awkward for anybody else. It kind of feels awkward. It's kind of him saying he knows how life came about in not so many words, that God definitely exists.
My challenge to him, I mean, first of all, this is one of those typical cases of this can't be true because my God means that it's not true. But if it turns out to be true, it just shows my God is even greater.
Right,
It's that unfalsifiable thing.
Right. Even if you come out saying that my God didn't do it, he still did it because he did the process that you're saying did it.
Yeah. And then on top of that.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there's the if that would be one way to verify his God. Like if his God, whatever God, any God can step in at this point and be like, here, let me divine reveal to you how life was created. That would basically prove that God, not only that they exist, but they're the one who did the creation in the first place. Like the fact that's not happening is as close as I can think of to a defeater for any God argument.
Well, I mean, you could say that God just does. You could go to deism and say that God doesn't care, like he just doesn't give a shit, But that's not Tour. Tour is definitely saying, my Lord, the Christian. He's talking about the classical Christian God here. So he's obviously not talking about some kind of deistic God.
Because this is how you did it. This is how it could be done. And I just don't think we're near that today. And I don't know that we'll discover this in my lifetime. But for me, it's an excitement. And I've had these occasions before in my life when I see things. I remember we were working on something that we call the synthetic brain, and DARPA asked us to call it something else. This was years before they had their synthetic brain process because they thought it would be bad press. But we were taking molecules randomly in a box, essentially on a chip, and programming it to do something useful without knowing the molecular order. And I remember my son was about 3 or 4 years old. He came running to me. And I thought, how did you put that in that brain? I'm trying to make an AND gate, an OR gate, a half adder or something simple. And there's all this complexity in biological brains. And so it makes it all the more exciting for me to look at a biological construct and to say, how was this put together? And so it's exciting for me if I can see this happen. And we don't really.
But that isn't the rhetoric he uses on YouTube. It's, cancel this field. This field is getting nowhere. It's all just a sham. They're never going to be able to find it. We may as well not bother. This is the kind of thing he doesn't say on YouTube. He doesn't say, hey, I'm excited for them to make new discoveries and find out how to do it.
Yeah, it's a huge tone change from earlier. Now it's, Einstein used a similar thing in order to try to get people excited and steer away from the collision with religious ideology. When people said, well, don't you think that what you're doing, delving into how the universe works and why it works and where it came from, is in some way sacrilegious? And Einstein said that, quite to the contrary. To me, it doesn't take anything away from any God. It's like reading the blueprints that God left behind for us.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where tour sounds like he's going right now, is like, these discoveries, they're even more magnificent for me because to me they're sacred. They're seeing the fingerprints of God in reality. But that's not what he was saying earlier.
Yeah, and I think it's very similar to the way that sort of I think it was Copernicus who presented his model of the heliocentric solar system, and sort of the Pope says, well, I don't see any room for God in your model, and he says, well, it works just fine without it, kind of thing, without a God.
That was Laplace.
Laplace, sorry, yeah. Yeah, so it's very strange that his rhetoric on YouTube is so different, and even earlier in this debate, it was so different. It seems like he's being chided a bit by Cronin here. That Cronin said, "Hey, you've been yelling at people for this time," and he's kind of chilled the F out a little bit, I guess. But it's weird. I just, you're right. He's basically said, heads I win, tails you lose. That if you find the cause, then I still win because it was God.
Really work, per se, on origin of my life in my lab. I mean, I certainly look at it and critique it, but I am longing for the answer. This whole thing of chiral-induced spin selectivity, I saw it from Ram Naaman, one of the discoverers of this, about 20 years ago when I was visiting him in Israel. And now to see that what it's beginning to open up, and this is why I said there's going to be many more phenomena that I think we're going to have to discover. I think it's quite wrong for us to think that we understand reaction chemistry, and we've got to, it's got to fit within this reaction chemistry that we understand. Molecules are going to have to somehow move toward life in much easier ways than we're observing them doing in order to have this thing happen. And I'm looking forward to the phenomena, because every time I see something new, I remember walking out of Ron Naaman's office saying,
no, you don't. You put on your YouTube channel and say why it's crap and why you don't believe it and why they're completely clueless about it, dude. What are you talking about?
And I'm curious what the hell his point is. He drifted off of the implications for religion pretty early on here.
Right.
He's talking about something else now.
Yeah. So the question was, what are the implications of finding life on another planet, say, or finding alien life on religion? That was the question. You're absolutely right. He's absolutely gone to, why are you happy about the accomplishments that we make because you're religious? He's really gone way off track. Yeah, and so this is the kind of thing, hang on, I'll just share this. This is the kind of thing that he puts up on your YouTube channel. They're lying to you. You've been deceived. That's a warning from the God of evolution between Christ and cavemen. This is the kind of stuff that he puts up. Not, hey, I'm excited about sort of, all of the discoveries made. Yeah, he's got a big problem with Dave. It's a thing. It's definitely a thing. But yeah, this is the thing. Origin of life with Stephen Meyer. Now, Stephen Meyer is a young Earth creationist, right? He believes the Earth is 6,000 to 10,000 years old. So I really
Stephen Meyer is a liar with an agenda, because he in fact, I had Stephen Meyer had a discussion with Sean McDowell. That was today's video over on my channel. They were talking about fine tuning. And it's the second video in a conversation series that they did. The previous one was about the cosmological argument. And Stephen, he is a young Earth creationist, but he has no problem just putting on the mask of an old Earth creationist, depending on who he's talking to. Like in that conversation with Sean about the cosmological argument from a couple of weeks ago, he was like, well, we see that the universe is demonstrably 14 billion years old, but that proves that God created Genesis in the beginning. And I'm like, that's not what you believe. Why are you lying about what you believe, you absolute monster?
No.
Well, we know why, but that's a whole other, it's a damn near conspiracy theory video. The point is he's a lying asshole.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see people like atheists when they sort of are talking about the formation of the Big Bang going, well, evolution's not true, so let's just, we don't pretend to have our beliefs as something else in order to sidetrack the conversation or get to the point of the matter. We do say, even if I conceded this, but we don't pretend that's our belief, right? We could say, even if I concede that evolution is true, then it doesn't prove a God. That's one thing we can say. But we don't pretend like, oh, evolution isn't true, and that still doesn't, we don't pretend like that. I don't know why these people do. Probably because they're really interested in sort of getting people to their beliefs through accepting this one little thing. Oh, life couldn't possibly have started, from nowhere. And then getting them onto that bandwagon, getting them further along down to, oh, well, the Bible's true, and so evolution can't be real.
It reminds me of that old quip in physics that based on what we understand from the laws of aerodynamics, bumblebees can't fly, but no one told the bumblebees.
Right.
It's like, no, that doesn't mean something supernatural is happening. It means we don't fully understand something. We have more to learn.
We understand that now. It's just at the time we didn't understand how that could possibly work.
Yeah, actually, it was a really simple solution. The person who came up with that one, I forget who it was. It may have gone all the way back to Linnaeus. But when he was calculating the lift force of the bee's wing, he was only measuring the forward stroke.
Mm-hmm.
The very simple answer, because he was thinking of like humans in a rowboat. It's only the one direction that you pull that you get the force.
Right.
The bee just alternated the direction of the wing, and it was generating lift on both swipes, forward and backward. It doubled the lift force, and there's no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, Lord, you are amazing for this material. So I think it's great for faith to see all the things that God has discovered. Just because I can look at a leaf on a tree out there and know that there's a magnesium atom sitting in a porphyrin, and I know light funnels into that thing, and you eject an electron and get photosynthesis, and the poor guy on the street who doesn't know the science can't get that appreciation. It gives me an enhanced view of the glory of the creation of God.
We have a follow-up question here,
No,
Jim?
actually, we're going to have to move on to
You say on your website
other people.
that you do not agree with the intelligent design conclusion, yet your work is widely used by the Discovery Institute and many other creationist organizations as support for the view that the failure to have a naturalistic origin of life helps to support the idea of a creator. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, well, I absolutely believe in a creator, for sure. And I say that on my website. And in 6 days, God created the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. I don't know what the length of the day is if we can quantify it based on our perspective today. But so I certainly believe in creation.
Yeah, this is where he couches it. Like, he's not saying, hey, he's basically saying, hey, we don't know the length of the day. I suspect that he thinks it was 6 days. I suspect that he's a young earth creationist. He just doesn't want to say it.
Yeah, he knows he'll get completely defeated immediately by all the science.
Or else somebody like Sygart, Dr. Sygart, who is a creationist, right? He believes that everything was created, but he's not a young earth creationist, and he does accept evolution, everything. He was in a debate for evolution. He was on the evolution side with Amy today.
Mm-hmm.
He would be... Yeah, he would be horrified for any of his work to be used in support of young earth creationism, because he is an honest guy. He has studied it, and he's an honest person. And, evolution's kind of indisputable at this point. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, very, very much
and
so. Yeah,
and as he pointed out, I saw a tiny snippet of the debate before I came to do this, but yeah, as he pointed out, there's problems with evolution all over the place. Like we have, it's not a complete thing. It's not absolutely complete, but rejecting it at this point is folly. It really has been proved to beyond a shadow of a doubt. There's still problems. There's always problems. There's problems in computer science. There's problems in, engineering, civil engineering, and there's problems everywhere. Just because there's problems doesn't mean our theories are not correct. That's what they mistake. There's sort of black and white. Oh, you're absolutely certain, or you're not certain at all. No, our confidence is incredibly high for evolution. Incredibly high.
Yeah, Newton's gravitational laws. Well, I don't think those were actually laws, but Newton's formulas for gravitation.
Yes, theory of gravity.
They weren't perfect. They weren't wrong, but they weren't right.
Correct.
That's why they got replaced by general relativity, because it was less wrong or more accurate, depending on which way you want to look at it.
Yeah. But we still use Newton's calculations for gravity to this day, because they're accurate enough to, like, you know, throw something or calculate the downward force of something. They're fine. They work.
Mm-hmm. And they're much simpler than general relativity.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Unless you need to be precise, there's no reason to use general relativity. There's no reason. It's just Newton's calculations are fine.
I'm very explicit on why I don't support the intelligent design directly. I say I'm sympathetic to it. It's just that I don't have a tool to assess design. Now, I know people are now trying to come up with measures of design. I don't have a spectroscopic tool. I don't have a mass spec tool. I don't have an analytical tool. So I think this is very couched and dodging. He's sort of saying, hey, I don't want to contradict the intelligent design people. Are you going to contradict the idea that the Earth is 10,000 years old? Like, can you at least do that? At least? But he sort of says, well, I don't know how old the Earth is. It's like, oh, come on, mate. Like, seriously.
Yeah, you're a scientist. You're a damn good scientist. Like, he's dropping nuggets of knowledge like fucking Skittles. Like, he just in between those two religious statements, he said, I can look at that leaf and I can know there's a magnesium atom somewhere in this one chemical, and he describes the photoelectric effect, and I'm just my jaw wanted to drop. I'm like, he's just throwing out that photosynthesis is utilizing the photoelectric effect, which is Einstein won a Nobel Prize for discovering that, and plants have just had it all this time, and two are just he has so much knowledge.
Yes.
He could be one of our very best if he could just get past his fucking preconceptions.
My colleagues to the same thing that I want to hold myself to. Show me the data. And so if I can't generate data that says, yes, this is the signature of an intelligent design, I am not going to support that in the sense that, yes, this has been intelligently designed, because I don't have a metric for it. I say I'm sympathetic to it, but I don't have this metric. That's why I don't embrace intelligent design, although I'm sympathetic toward it.
But you allow all of your work to be used as evidence.
It's not a matter of allowing. I mean, how can I stop it? I mean, people take my videos
You give them permission.
Oh, he doesn't just not stop it. He does interviews with Stephen Meyer. He does do stuff to support AIG and Creation Institute. He does support it, and he knows he supports it. He works at supporting it. That's the problem. It isn't that you are doing it yourself. It is you are giving credibility to people that have no credibility, and that's the problem. And it's a false sense of credibility, because
and tearing down people who deserve the credibility, like Lee, or even Professor Dave, for that matter.
Even if I say no, you permission to be published
as part of the evidence.
Oh, if people take my written material and publish it in their papers, I can't restrict them. It's published, so I can't say no, you can't publish it. I have no. That's up to them. So it's.
But you could come out and denounce them doing that. Like, denounce that, hey, the conclusions that they have reached off your research in no way comes to that conclusion, but you don't, and you're fine with them doing it. And you will do interviews with Stephen Meyer, who does think the Earth is 6,000 to 10,000 years old. You will do all of this stuff, and that's the problem. Like, I'm not saying that you can prevent them from publishing it. Like, you know, I totally get it. Once you've published a paper, anybody gets to use that paper online to say whatever. You know, if we could stop Donnie, we would have by now, but, you know, he will just take a paper and use it however he wants. Sure.
Oh my goodness.
But you can be like Mary Schweitzer and come out and publicly say, hey, creationists are misrepresenting what I've said, but you don't, because you are not just sympathetic to them, you are supportive of them. And that's the problem.
Yeah. And to answer Katie Barber's question in the chat, yes, James Tour not only consults for Discovery Institute,
does he?
I'm looking at a video right now, James Tour, The Mystery of the Origin of Life on the Discovery Science Channel. Like, he gets paid to come give presentations for them towards their bent. He's a paid speaker. He's completely in the Discovery Institute's pocket.
Yeah. Follow the money. Totally right, Katie. Follow the money. 100% right.
Permission. And I've never denied permission.
We're going to pause for the sake of the audience. I failed to introduce other people besides Jim and Lee. So Randy Isaac had a career leading up to being vice president of research for IBM before he retired and took over asa3.org. Look that up. And Melissa Franklin is a physicist at Harvard. And Peter Kraft is a philosophy professor from Boston College. So would one of you like to follow up with some questions?
I'd like to ask Jim a question which is not directly relevant to the material tonight about chemistry. Lee sort of criticized you for saying you really want a God of the gaps, and I think you don't. So my question is, suppose that we discovered some very natural explanation of what was previously thought to be a miracle, which is possible. In the book of Exodus, it's described in one chapter as a miracle. God rolled the Red Sea apart. And in another chapter, it's described by a natural explanation. The wind blew the thing apart. How do you distinguish what's miraculous and supernatural versus what's natural?
I wish.
He seems real uncomfortable with these questions, like very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. He
Probably
should.
because he knows that the type of thing that he's saying, the claims that he are making are not backed by any kind of science. It's tragic. It's absolutely tragic. Like, seriously, dude, what are you doing?
I were a better philosopher so that I could talk about this intelligently. Certainly the miraculous is something that doesn't normally occur. That doesn't mean but certainly we have many things that could occur that don't happen routinely.
Well,
so distinguishing those.
You're not a miracle.
I'm sorry?
You don't normally occur. None of us, each of us is an exception. We're not clones. So how can you use the frequency of occurrence as a distinction between the natural?
No,
so the philosopher is pointing out that everybody is a freak occurrence. Everybody is sort of, something that doesn't happen every day. We're all unique in that way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's a good point. I mean, the problem.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's much like I forget who popularized it, but there's a saying that the odds of winning the lottery are incredibly remote, but someone wins every single day.
Yeah, like big thing flying, Wayne. I get you, mate. It's a lot of people have said to me, why don't you convert and just sort of say this stuff? And even the worst apologist on YouTube has so many followers. Like it is actually ridiculous how many some of the worst people out there have.
Oh, how is Jamie's channel doing? I haven't checked in a while.
Oh, Jamie's terrible. The studio 315 or something.
215, yeah.
215. Absolutely terrible, like terrible. And he's got tons of followers. Yeah, probably you're probably right. However, so the way that I look at it is how much is your integrity worth to you? And to me, my integrity is worth a lot. It might not be worth much to other people. I'm not here to judge them. I just who I am and my contentment in saying the things that I believe and having integrity is worth more than that to me. It's worth more than millions to me. Our integrity sells for so little, like so little. We can give it away. We can just lie to make profit. We can act in a immoral way so easily, and it seems like it's worth it, but it's not. Well, I don't believe it is. So, yeah, I couldn't do that because my integrity is worth more to me than that. So I hope that answers your question.
As I'm talking with a philosopher, and you guys can just dance around me. There's no way I can really compete, Peter.
Well, I was going to say the same thing to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a valid question. You've posited a miracle for the origin of life. How do you tell what's a miracle and what's natural? it's a valid question that he kind of dodges these kind of questions, and that was I mean, it's quite obvious that's a dodge. Oh, I feel like you're dancing around me and I can't keep up. Seriously, dude, it's a reasonable question.
Yeah,
you're the one putting yourself. Sorry, go ahead.
The humility deflection. I'm not going to answer because you're just so much smarter than me, you know, or what. No, that's a bullshit response, because when he's not confronted by somebody who can put him in his place, he makes no bones about overtly stating it's definitely a miracle. Well, how the fuck do you know that? You know?
Yeah, and this is sort of the what Tour does. When he gets pinned by these people that know what they're talking about, he becomes very non-committal to anything. But his YouTube channel is just resplendent with all of these claims of miracles and, you know, God creating people. And this is his shtick. When he's on YouTube, he's very apologist, very creationist, very supporting the institute. When he's out in academia, he really doesn't care, and I think that is really two-faced of him. You should, as an academic, have your YouTube channel be representative of what you're doing. You know, you don't see Gutsick Gibbon, you know, putting out a whole load of crap on her channel that she doesn't back up in academia. Doesn't happen. This guy, though, wow.
The comment I'm making here is, like, in science, you use the problem to then set up, to generate new theories that might explain that problem and do experiments. What Jim keeps doing is just say there's a problem. Right, and I think if you're just saying a problem and then saying rather magnanimously later, say, well, you know, I think it's going to be solved. I think there's something odd going on there. It's really important if we're doing science in the way that I think is going to be productive. Problems are really interesting. Problems, we shouldn't be finding problems and shouting at each other. Say, there's a problem that this doesn't work. You know, fusion, it's impossible because no one stabilized the plasma. You're all idiots. You're all liars. You made it all up. No, they just haven't worked out how to stabilize the plasma yet.
How does that impact on religion?
Were you asking about the God in the gaps argument about problems, right? So all I'm saying is saying that they're a problem and then without coming up with a way of tackling that problem leaves it there as something that someone could assume is a God in the gap argument. And I find that to be unhelpful.
So the God is in the gap?
No,
if there are gaps in the theory, there's a God in there? Is that the?
No, it's like presenting problems without without actually finding those people who are actually working on those problems. I think it's a great disservice if Jim says all these problems, all these origin life chemists are actually working on the problems in good faith.
Okay, I have a question. Is that okay? It's okay with you? Jim, you're now head of NSF, and you have $50 billion to spend in the next 10 years.
Is that the National Science Foundation? Is that?
I believe so, yeah.
NSF, did she say? Yeah, National Science Foundation. Sorry, I just want to make it. That is a government agency for funding scientific projects to help. Yeah, okay. So it's a government foundation. Gotcha.
On origins of life, and you get to decide who gets the money. What do you want to happen? Because I know what you don't want to happen, but I don't know what you do want.
So she's basically saying you don't want to, because he keeps complaining about this 50 billion going to origin of life research, which is, you know, and they have nothing. They're clueless and they get all this money. So he rants and raves about this on his YouTube channel. So this is a great question. What should we do with this money? We want to solve the origin of life. Where should we give it to churches? Should we blast it into space? Should we give it to the what should we be doing with this money? This is a very good question, right?
And someone was talking about wanting something. I think that was you. Yeah.
Okay, so let me.
And I don't want to have any argument. I don't want to hear anything about what people. Yeah, I don't want you to say as an answer, and this is not fair because I don't want you to say I don't want those guys who are doing bad science. I want you to say what you do want. What positive could happen with that $50 billion?
So I would not make that decision myself. I think it would be wrong to make that decision. I think that we would have to convene people from the community and outside the community to make that assessment. I would never designate and use that. I mean, and this is actually more realistic than you might imagine. I mean, this is a fictitious thing that you put before me, but certainly in my own university, people have said, you know, if Jim Tour goes into this institute, what's he going to say with the people in evolutionary biology? Well, I would never make that decision for my colleagues myself. I would put it before the community. But what I would say is that what have people been trying for many years that have not worked? Lee has said repeatedly that I just keep saying, no, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. No, what I have said repeatedly is there are things that don't work, that repeatedly they've made one small molecule after another.
Sorry, I really want to hear, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I have ADD.
That's sort of dodging the question. Like, you must, if you're saying, hey, the money shouldn't go to these people, there must be something that you think would be better served by the money instead, right? Donating it to cancer research, you know, putting it towards the, you know, what should we do with that money? You must have an opinion on that.
It's
not
such
just.
Sorry, it's all right. It's all right. It's such a cowardly move on his part to be like, oh, I don't know, and put it in the community. I mean, I don't want to talk about him, but I can't make it. No, he's a material science guy. He should be like, he should just with a big old grin say, carbon nanofibers, obviously, right. You know, he should just get all excited about his own field and just wink and then on to the next question. But no, he's got to fucking duck and dodge and shit. Guilty conscience, I guess.
Probably, or probably he doesn't, you know, the question, he's probably thinking, well, the question's going to be like, well, should we just ignore origin of life? Like, don't you care about origin? If you just say, hey, put it into cancer research, we shouldn't do origin of life. But he can't say that because they'll say, well, don't you care about origin of life? I think that he's kind of stuck here because he's just said he wants to know the answers to origin of life, but he also has railed so much about it being funded. Like, where's he supposed to go from that? So instead, he's just dodging and say, hey, I can't make that decision. Let other people make it. Yeah, but like, where would you want to see it? Like, you really are. This is what he does. He sort of says, oh, well, speaking as a scientist a lot of the time. Oh, but what's your personal opinion? No, I can only speak as a scientist. Well,
yeah,
it's really cowardly. It's
So I think
like
it's okay.
You're emperor of the world. It's your job. This is your duty to decide what happens. What do you do? You know,
right? And see, the last election that I voted for, I got this kind of thing from it's a politician's answer, isn't it? Really, it's a politician's answer, right? The one question they asked was, like, do you support abortion rights for women? And one person said, but there is no current drive for the party to take away abortion rights for women. And they said, no, do you support abortion rights for women? And they said, well, there's no current policy to you know, and the other person just went, yes. And that's it. Right. It's very simple. Like, you know, Tour's giving a politician's answer. Well, it wouldn't be up to me to determine where any funding would go in this circumstance. I would have to refer that to a committee. She didn't ask that. She asked, where would you want it to go? It's a very specific question. And I think she's sort of clarifying it because he's not answering it.
I have a card that I carry normally. I show to people. But I want to hear something positive. Like, if you were in charge, you would build an amazing laboratory, and this is the way you would move forward. That's what I want to hear about.
Well, you already know what you want to hear.
What?
All right, you just said it. I mean,
no, I'm asking you for your ideas. I'm
right. Sorry. So I would say that we have to approach this differently. I don't know the full approach. $5 billion is a lot.
He talks a lot for someone that doesn't have any idea of an approach he wants to make.
Lot of money. $50 billion over 10 years is a lot of money. I mean, Origin of Life is a you know, it's a boutique community in the sense of where research goes. So even 50 million would be a big thrust for that program. But what I would say is, okay, here's a new phenomenon. You have chiral-induced spin selectivity. Dietmar Seselov just came out with a paper where that has really enhanced crystallization. So you have a new phenomenon that is really pushing in showing how chirality may come forth in small molecules. That is a big advance. Let's push that. So let's expand upon that and see how that might turn into homochirality of long chain molecules into polymers. And so now you've got these long chain polymers.
Aren't we doing that? Shouldn't we be doing that?
I mean, it's not only possible, probable, but it's like it's so reasonable. It's almost obvious. If you've got chirality in short chain molecules and you build the short chain molecules into long, multi-monomers, the 600 mers and whatever that he's talking about, of course there's going to be chirality. If it's present in the parts, it'll be present. That's how emergent properties work.
Yeah.
But I don't think that we know enough. There's not enough scientific evidence now to give us a basis upon which to really build a firm hold to solve this problem. I mean, some people say that it's right around the corner, and they think that that's beneficial to say that it's right around the corner. Okay. And I say it's not, wait a minute, let me finish. No. I say it's not beneficial to be saying this all the time. It's not beneficial to the community, because if you keep telling young people, we've got this thing solved, they don't want to go into it. It's a problem. If we say,
oh, bullshit.
Absolutely.
No one's saying that we've solved it. Look, your opponent just got up and said there are so many problems to solve. There are all these problems. Like, you are full of it. You might be talking about pop sites, maybe, or individuals, but the field is not saying what you're claiming. This is for your pop sort of creationist YouTube channel that you're saying all of this.
Yeah, it doesn't make any damn sense. It's like cosmology. Okay, Einstein came up with general relativity, and then Lemaitre built it with Hubble and Schleifer's data and came up with the Big Bang model, and now we've got cosmogony solved. Yep. So no one wants to go into the field. And yet there's more astrophysicists today than in Einstein's time, when everybody was all excited about it.
Yeah.
Like, even if we actually did have it solved, which we don't, just inspires people to want to learn more. Like, okay, we have a general vague model. Let's pin down some details. Like, how many galaxies are there?
Yeah.
We still don't know. We keep having to revise our estimate upward by orders of magnitude.
And now James Webb has come along, and it's blown away some of our ideas about cosmogony, and cosmology and early galaxy formation. So, it would be kind of like saying, hey, but this new thing came along and we don't have enough evidence. Well, we're not going to find it by ignoring it. This is the whole point. I think that Tours, he is stuck in this religion. He's stuck. He's 100% stuck. He can't go against AIG, and he can't go against sort of what scientists would do. So he's stuck with these couch statements, sort of saying, "Oh, but here's these problems," while sort of playing both sides of the fence. I think he's very, very dishonest, in my opinion. That's my opinion.
I think he knows it too. I suspect that that's a big part of his rage problem, is he's projecting his own cognitive dissonance. He knows he's got two contradictory belief systems, and he hates it, but he can't abandon either one of them.
Yeah.
We've cured cancer. We don't have to deal with this anymore. Who's going to go into it? So that's something else.
Really? You think if we come up with a cure for cancer, nobody's going to go into cancer research? I don't know about that, champ. But
it's like saying, we figured out how to get rockets into space relatively reliably, so no one's going to go into rocket science anymore.
Yeah.
That I would say we shouldn't be projecting that.
What do the people who give you the $50 billion want to happen to it? I mean, you don't give somebody $50 billion and say, do with it what you want.
Right. So these are ultimately taxpayers, and I'm not sure taxpayers ever have much to say about what happens to their tax money. I guess I mean, how often do we really?
What? Are you serious? People that pay taxes don't often have anything to say about where their tax dollars go. Excuse me, are you living in the real world?
I mean, often people aren't given a say, but they do have opinions.
Oh, they have opinions, all right. People have wide opinions on what should happen to their tax dollars. A lot of them agree that it probably should go more towards infrastructure and less towards military and things like that. But hey, you know, it depends who you talk to. Okay. You aren't living in the world that we're living in, because I know a lot of people with opinions on where their tax dollars should go.
They get to you know, I guess all we can do is elect representatives that we think represent us.
In light of the fact that almost all the money goes into the STEM courses and not the humanities, I doubt that the answer to that question is we want to do pure science and just satisfy our curiosity about how life originated.
Well, let me, if I may answer the question, right? I have some. So I think that actually there is a really interesting intersection with the humanities, right? Because humanities were produced by selection.
Yeah, of course, it's the philosopher that's complaining about humanities not getting enough money. Yeah, cheers. Good on you, mate. Yeah. I see you, philosopher. I see you.
Selection, right? Our culture is produced by selection.
But in
a very similar way. So what would I do? Well, I'm
radically dissimilar.
Well, forgive me for a second. Let me explain. And you may have your mind changed. Or you may decide you're not. So I'm going to put forward a testable hypothesis. First of all, what would we do with the money? I think it's right. You can have peer review, but let's say I have 50 billion for a day. I don't think origin of life is quite a boutique area. I think there's a lot of good synthetic chemists who are doing things at the edge of cancer, looking at complexity and really trying, and also in gene therapy, but there's overlap. So I think one of the things we want to do is break out of our culture, out of our discipline only silos. Origin of life, if we call it, is not going to be solved by a chemist or a computer scientist or a biologist. But it is going to require us to actually look at what is it that is the difference between. So I would always, my fun thing is like physics is kind of low memory. So if you've got a short memory, ADHD, you can do physics, it's just a few equations and away you've got it on your teach. Then if you're like, well, I've got the periodic table, I'll do that a bit, I've got that nailed. Then there's biology, and suddenly all hell breaks loose because you go from biology to intelligence and abstraction. And yes, you do get philosophers. No origin of life, no biology, right? No biologist, no philosopher, no philosophy. So we are connected all the way back.
But the kind of causality changes radically once you get people. You get choice.
That is something that is materialistic, and it's really interesting.
Not. Choice is not materialistic. It has a materialistic basis.
I'm a materialist, and I think that the brain, everything that goes on in your brain, can be explained materialistically.
I think he's a determinist.
Mm-hmm. I dare say.
I think he's talking about hard determinism, that he thinks that everything, all decisions made are in fact made up of priors, that your decisions are being made by a combination of genetic, behavioral and psychological influences, that, you know, there is no true free will kind of thing that he's talking about.
Which is a very philosophical thing for him to say, since it's completely unfalsifiable. I mean, I tend to lean in that general direction. I suspect there's more to it. I think it might be a black and white situation, because I feel like most of our choices are deterministic. If we rewound time and had the same things happen with the same inputs, our responses would be the same. But that's because we operate on autopilot for much of what we do throughout the day. You know, drive to work. Okay, I'm going to listen to my favorite radio station or whatever audiobook I've queued up or whatever. A lot of these things, there isn't really a choice unless we take deliberate effort to override the default behavior. But that's the thing, is we do have the ability to override instinct, default behavior. Like, you breathe without thinking about it, but you can manually take control of your breathing.
Yes.
That's my thoughts on it. But that's unfalsifiable too, because we can't rewind time and test.
Correct.
And I think it's interesting that we have. So let me just finish the last part about what we do with the money. So you need to break down these silos, and it starts at school, because chemistry and biology are producing radically new disciplines for inventing vaccines and producing composites and making materials that compute. So we really need to challenge that in a new way. And by breaking down these boundaries, we're going to develop new technologies. And it isn't going to be a boutique, we're just going to make, wouldn't it be great if I can invent an inorganic life form that could fix CO2, right? And use sunlight and put that CO2 in a way that it's, I don't know, fix it into diamonds. It's not going to be metabolized, and take all the CO2 out of the atmosphere, right?
I think the De Boers family would have a big issue with you, but apart from that, you know, go wild.
Yeah,
They're
drop that shit on Venus or Mars. If we could scrub the CO2 from the atmosphere of either planet, freaking incredible. Okay, you don't want to scrub all the CO2 from Mars right now because the atmosphere is only 11 millibars. But if we could like pump up the atmosphere, get it, 500 or 600 millibars, which given that Mars's gravity is about a third of Earth's, would give us the, roughly the same air pressure as in the Andes Mountains. It'd be livable for humans with the right mix of gases. Then scrub the CO2 from it while maintaining pressure. You can terraform Mars with that thing. And since it's inorganic, you don't have to worry about it. That would be amazing.
That would be awesome. I mean, they've come up with synthetic life that can eat oil spills, kind of thing, that metabolize the oil, things that can help us. I love Cronin here. He's looking at how is origin of life going to, or can origin of life provide input into these other fields? Like, why is we just looking this thing on its own? I think it's a wonderful idea. I think he is sort of, to my mind, Cronin's kind of the future and Tour's the past. That chemistry is limited. There's all these things we can't do and sort of grumble about them. But he's sort of saying, how can we integrate this into new emerging technologies in order to make our lives better? One of these people is a futurist, and one of them is not. One is a harsh conservative, but science isn't about being conservative. It's about progressiveness, thinking about things differently.
Wouldn't it be great if we could understand how to terraform planets in our solar system by building new minimal? The only way you're going to get to nanotechnology that is that Jim thinks about, ironically or not ironically, is by making an evolutionary system that can self-regulate and self-repair. We are at the precipice of so much new science and new technology. It's really exciting. It's not niche. It is about asking the question and bringing those new disciplines together. And with that Nature paper, you could see the collision of all the disciplines. I knew something interesting was going on because everyone's like, what do you mean? Arguing about words, and no one's disputing the science. No one's disputing the fact we can measure assembly.
So the answer to the question, what's the $50 billion for, is not science, but technology.
No, I would say we would establish a new set of disciplines. I have my hobby horse of what I'd love to do, right? But that's just, what would you spend the money on? I would basically I would build new Earth simulators, look at the interactions of geology and organic chemistry that hasn't been done before.
For what purpose? For
looking at selection and looking how on planet Earth, how prebiotic chemistry, the prebiotic soup, interacts with our earthbound geology, and how the geology, the combinatorial explosion in mineral space, interacts with combinatorial explosion in chemical space and generates biology.
Is that to satisfy your curiosity, or is that to improve other people's lives by technology?
I built the computer, which has just spawned a $50 million company, because I wanted to solve origin of life, and I built a new technology, a programming language for chemistry that's allowing us to discover new drugs and make new materials. I didn't say I'm going to do this technology. Blue sky science gives rise.
Yeah. He's right. Spin-off technology. He's absolutely right. And so he's pointing out, hey, he built a computer to solve origin of life, and we got a computer that is, or at least a system that he's talking about, a programming language or system that's uniquely suited to creating new chemical compositions, chemical drugs to help our lives. NASA does this all the time. Like you mentioned Velcro earlier, which was a NASA spin-off. It was something they did. But there's more than that. NASA's actually responsible for so many things we're completely unaware of. The space blanket that helps people when they're in shock and need heat, that was a NASA invention. NASA invented a lot of the firefighting equipment that firefighters use because they were dabbling into environmental control. So they actually came up with how to protect somebody from boiling temperatures. And firefighters now use it. That even a cloud system. You might not know this, but they invented the first cloud system. Their language, I can't remember the name of the language. It's right on the tip of my brain. Oh God, I've completely forgotten it. Anyway, that they were responsible for inventing the cloud system because they needed central communication systems in order for people to upload information into and store remotely. This is the thing, like they invented all of this stuff. A lot of climate control systems was based on NASA. I could go on and on. But what NASA has contributed is actually really, really incredible. You know, I got to find out what the hell that was.
Well, while you're on it, I'll point out that a lot of pure scientists do get a little nose in the air about applied sciences. Oh, that's just that you're not answering any new questions. You're just, you know, making people's lives better, extending human lifespan and increasing well-being. But like everything, plastic, bottled water. There's so many things. Material science in my freaking atomic fidget thing. These damn toothpicks. It's all applied science. Everything in our lives is applied science. Maybe it doesn't help us reach new discoveries, but in a way, it kind of does, though, because our ability to communicate around the world rapidly increases our ability to share ideas and bounce thoughts off each other, and increases the pace of progress. Our ability to, you know, log our notes with relative ease. Anything that can facilitate our efficiency in the processes of science also helps science. I mean, freaking electric lights. I can work during times when the sun went away without risking burning my house down with oil lamps and candles, you know?
Mm-hmm. OpenStack was the name of it. OpenStack.
Aha.
Which is just fantastic. Like, yeah. And here's the thing. It's the theories and the theoretical science that motivates this to happen. Like, yeah, engineering is great, but it is the theoretical stuff that drives this. It's the engine that drives it. And these spin-off technologies are what we get. And so this is what he's talking about. That we might not find the origin of life, and there will be all of these spin-off benefits from just doing the science. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, I want answers as much as the next person, but I don't have this Puritan streak about it either. Applied science is also valid. And I mean, in some ways, it like you invent a new thing. Now you can market that thing. And yes, I hate capitalism, but that helps fund even more science, you know?
And yeah, you're right, Victoria. NASA's made mistakes as well. Absolutely. Yeah. That's science. You make mistakes. You correct them. You fix them. You keep going. Yeah. No one's saying that it's perfect.
New technology. The laser wasn't invented because someone wanted to have this technology.
To give a simple answer to my question, is science worthwhile for its own sake, even if there's no technological?
Absolutely. But it is incumbent upon us. If the taxpayer spends money, and I take money training people, and I think Jim's the same, he's got a large number of patents and things that have come out, it's incumbent upon us to say, wow, we've invented this tech, we've done this science, which seems like it's got application as a technology, and we should do everything we can to make that circle go round. And I love to ask questions. I would like you to give me money to answer those questions. In return, I make sure that we do something for society.
Okay, we're going to have one more question from either Melissa or Randy, and then Lee, you'll follow with a 2-minute final word, and then Jim will follow with a 2-minute final word. Actually, before you guys do it, I'll have a final word, then you guys will do it. So
3 final words.
3 final words. So Randy or Melissa,
I might just skip to the final words, to be honest with you, and see how they stack up. Are these their final words?
It seems so.
Oh, that's Dave's final word. Dave, I don't know who you are. Thank you for doing this, whoever you are.
His name tag says he's the facility chaplain.
Facility chaplain. That mirror is so ostentatious. It's been annoying me for ages now. Oh, hey, Catter. Hey, Catbug.
It really is.
Very special big hugs for Catbug, who's just finished work. Oh, that sucks. I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, I'm not sorry to hear that you finished work. I'm sorry you had to go to work.
Told you too, you take 20. So, okay, go ahead. Lee first.
All right, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for listening to us today, and thanks to Jim for and David for kind of bringing this together. I think that the reason I came here wasn't to defend origin of life or prebiotic chemistry, far from it. It's to basically say that we have to point out the problems we have, and these problems are not catastrophic failure. They are evidence of success, that science is progressing. There are new ideas coming. Assembly theory may be fantastic, it may not be. But if we're not bold and we don't actually come up with new ideas that can be demonstrably built upon, destroyed, and made better, we are not going to be doing science. And I think very strongly that we need to have critical discourse about what does this mean, what can we measure, what can we refute, and how we can bring people across and go across this divide. In science, I want to develop new ways of doing science. I want to go across. I'm not just a chemist. I like robotics. I want to learn some physics. If you're more interested in that, that's great. And maybe some mathematics as well. So it's incumbent upon us to basically bring all the energy from humanity who wants to be involved in, not exclude them by being overcritical and basically saying, haha, you failed, you're a joker, clueless, ridiculous, don't exist.
Clueless,
Yeah.
That's
That's what discourages people from joining the field, and he's absolutely right. It's been one of my big bugaboos since I was a child that we have nearly 8 billion people on this planet, and only a few thousand work in the sciences.
Yep.
It's beyond reprehensible. We're squandering so much of our potential with stupid busy work jobs, sales and offices and marketing and finance, when if we could devote even just 1% of our potential to advancing science, technology, healthcare, anything, if we actually tried, instead of just treating science like some fucking hobby where people like James Tour get up and pontificate about how wonderful their God is or how stupid the other guy is or whatever, fucking tried, we would be light years ahead of where we are today. It really gets me worked up.
No, I hear you, and it saddens me, and this may be controversial, but it really saddens me that people that play sport are paid way more than any scientist. They're paid magnitudes higher for playing sport. And don't get me wrong, you might love sport, but people that have invented things to improve all of our lives have died in poverty. It behooves us to take care of the people that are doing things for our society. Look at Alan Turing. Never was successful, and he saved so many people during he saved an estimated 1 million lives during World War II from simply the work that he did, and single-handedly probably won that war, single-handedly through the invention of the computer, the modern computer. And he was chemically castrated for being gay. That's how we treated him. That's
we can't allow brains like that to reproduce, even though he was gay and wasn't going to reproduce anyway. God.
Well, it was to take the sex drive away from people. That's what it was intended to do. So if you can't stop them, having sex with men, then stop them desiring sex in the first place. Barbaric, horrible, and he did so much for so many. And programmers, we all coders everywhere, him, people like Ada Lovelace, other, people in the industry, we acknowledge them, even though, Tesla died in poverty. It's this kind of where in our capitalist society, where are we putting our dollars to say, hey, this is important? And don't get me wrong, you might love sport. I don't think it's that important. I just don't. Not compared to somebody doing research on cancer. I'm sorry, I just don't. So, but you may disagree. I get that. 199 from Robin. Thank you so much for your super sticker, Robin. Really appreciate it. I really do. That's fantastic. You've been awesome. And happy hauling. Can I say that? Is that insulting?
Sure.
Happy hauling. Happy hauling, everybody. Gay folks can reproduce. Yes, they can. They can use surrogates. That's a good point, Kata. That's a very good point. But, the way that the British government came out and apologized for the way that they treated that man. And so they frigging well should. Absolutely they should. That's a disgrace to a hero. That's a disgrace. So yeah, sorry, that makes me angry. I mean, if he had survived until how would computers look now if that man could dedicate his mind to the computer? It's a loss. It's a tragedy for all of humankind. It really is. And why? Because he liked men. That's it. Terrible. Anyway.
Rather than, well done, that's a good idea, didn't stand up to scrutiny here. Here's how you failed. Here's how you might do better. This is the only way I know how to make progress in life, and I'm hoping I'll exist again tomorrow and can fail again, and I will fail slightly differently. But it's really important in science and in our culture and in the humanities when we're trying to think about where does meaning emerge, where does purpose emerge, is that we do have this debate at this boundary. Science and religion, for me, are like this. They're two circles that really, really should never be twisted, but they almost touch. And I don't like it when religion uses science as an argument to attack and vice versa. I think we can coexist and we can learn something from each other, because you know what we are exploring? We are exploring our collective humanity, and we are curious, and we want to basically have a better future and have a bit of fun along the way.
Very, very well said. Very well said. Cronin has been all class in this. Just all class. I've been really impressed by everything he's had to say. I really like him. He's moderate, optimistic, acknowledging his own flaws, acknowledging his failures, and saying, "Hey, that's fine." I really like his stance in this. I really do. And Tua does look chastised. He really does. I think he's realizing, hey, this is how a scientist behaves, and not, yelling at people and calling them useless and hopeless and things like that. It was weird because in that talk with David, for that debate with David Farina, he said he treats his students like this. And it's like, your poor students. Like, seriously, if I had a professor that's going, "Oh, you're clueless and you don't know anything," I would be like, wow, you suck.
Yeah, that's not teaching. That's not educating. That's not
right.
It's not serving progress. It's not helping anything except possibly vent some of your rage. And it's absolutely disgraceful. And it's I mean, Lee isn't the god of science. He isn't the next incarnation of Carl Sagan by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
But he's got the attitude of the scientist. It's not about winning right now. It's not about solving the problem. It's about the process of discovery and what we can learn along the way. It's about bringing people in and building a better tomorrow, because after all, while science is a process for generating answers and more questions, the reason we do it is to make tomorrow better than yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, Big Bang Mama, they don't almost touch, but they have the same questions. It's the same questions if you think about it. Where did we come from? Where are we going? Why should we do this or that? It does have the same question. So I get what he's saying. Yes. But yeah, I get also what you mean by, like, the Bible is not scientific. I understand that. I get it.
Take it home, Jim.
So I apologize if I came across as angry.
Couldn't imagine where we got that idea from. You just called his paper garbage, dude. Seriously. Yeah, he's chastised right now. He's just saw somebody be all class, all scientific inquiry, be the model of what an inquiring science should be, and go, oh, maybe I shouldn't act like I do on my YouTube channel. Yeah, no shit, James. No shit.
And even that's a little bit of a dodge. He's like, oh, I apologize if I came across as angry. I'm not sorry I said mean things. I'm sorry that you took it in such a way that your feelings got hurt.
Yeah. No, really, you should be saying, I'm sorry I got angry. That's what you should be saying. Not, I'm sorry if I came across like I was angry. No, you were angry. That was evident. Like, seriously.
I really do. I mean, I am passionate about everything. I'm passionate with my grandchildren. Ask me a question, and I'm just... So I wasn't angry at all. So if you
do you call them trash as well?
That's another excuse. He's weasel wording. Like, You can be passionate without being a dick.
Yeah. Do they hand you a piece of paper with their drawing and you go, this is trash, this is useless, like there's no benefit in this, throws it away? I just imagining Tua treating his grandkids like he treats the people that work in Origin of Life, you know. I don't think he does somehow. Just thinking.
Thought I was angry. I wasn't angry at all. I'm not angry at Lee. In fact, I'm happy that he came. I worked very hard to get you to come here, and I'm glad that you came. And I'm not angry at anybody. I don't think that scientists that work in Origin of Life are disingenuous. I don't think, you know, many people have asked me, oh, are they do?
Then I would sue your YouTube channel for defamation, because that's all you say on your YouTube channel. Look, I just showed you his YouTube channel when it said they're lying, right? This is the thing. I am appalled at his sort of oh, well, I never meant to offend anybody when I called you a bunch of light. Come on, dude. Of course you did. Of course you did. Like, you know, that's like me saying, oh, I didn't mean to offend anybody by putting like Donnie on the back of a bull, bullshitting out creation sites. Of course I did. Come on now. Like that isn't a coincidence that I did that. Oh, well, yeah, it was just, yeah. And a lot of it was.
I'm sorry you found that offensive, Donnie.
Right. And you know, like I could say that, and really it was lighthearted jibing, but it was jibing, you know, come on, be honest. At least be honest, dude. You man. But I love that Cronin's made him look like a total bad guy in all of this. He really has come across as a real bad guy, you know, like he's acting in bad faith. And rightly so, because that's exactly what he's doing.
Doing this, I mean, Christians ask me, are they doing this because, you know, they want to somehow exclude God? I don't know any scientists that wake up in the morning and think, how can I exclude God today through my work? How can I prove that he doesn't exist? That's, to me, I don't think that I don't know any scientists that do that. They may not think about God, but that's fine for them. So I don't think that they're intentionally doing anything wrong. I do think it is wrong.
Then take down the video that says they're all lying, please.
Yeah. In an area to say that we've got this thing solved when we don't have it solved, when experiment after experiment, it's becoming harder and harder for us. And so, and I have seen changes in the publications of my colleagues when they're writing their papers on, when they talk about the origin of life. They're a lot more measured now in their claims and in what they say. I'm sure that you would agree that is a good thing. If you tell young people that we've got this thing solved, it hurts the field because who wants to go into it? And so I'm not upset with anybody. I'm not angry. I am passionate, and I apologize if I hurt anybody's feelings. Apologize to you, Lee, if I hurt your feelings about this. But you know, I'm not sure how I can curtail this. But feel sorry for my wife. I mean,
oh, we do.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Oh, honey, I closed a good deal at work. That's trash. Your entire field is trash.
This meatloaf isn't the best that's ever been prepared. It's
right. There's problems with this meatloaf. Toss it. Shut it down. Shut the meatloaf down. Yeah, but I think that it's just I don't know what he's doing right now. He's kind of being gracious. He's realized that, hey, he looks terrible because Cronin's been so gracious. You know, I acknowledge there's all these. You know, let's work together. Let's you know, olive branched it and just graciously so. So he's sort of, oh well, I want to be the one that's, you know, all gracious and, you know. So he's trying to make up ground. I'm really sorry, mate. That you jumped the shark in your introduction. You set the tone for your side at that point. He's trying to make up ground now, but wow. I don't know, man.
Think of what the poor lady's got to go through. But I've been married 42 years, and you know, we're together and we're happy, and we're in the same home. We have 4 kids together, so it couldn't be all bad.
Good, yeah.
And we end on an anecdote.
Yep. His
closing was more just a couple of talking points. The, you know, telling people it's solved will not get kids into the thing. And that's, you know, he's got no problem with anybody kind of thing. He's got a problem with the field or what the field's doing. But apart from that, it all was just hey, I love these guys. They're all awesome. What a tone shift from the start. Like just a 180 tone shift. Because Tour kind of does say that origin of life is done to exclude God from science, to kill God kind of thing, to make sure God isn't talked about. So I kind of think that this is a 180 from his usual position.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. But on the plus side, he didn't explode. Not quite. He was almost there in the intro, but he didn't actually, get to explode, which was nice.
Yeah, I don't know. My head's kind of I'm feeling whiplash from that quick reversal that he pulled there. I'm like, what?
Sure.
What happened to all this stuff about how impossible it is to form polypeptide chains and all that's right out the window. Now I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings,
Like, because I think that Lee Cronin is right, and he's sort of got assembly theory and sort of explaining this. It's very hard for someone like Tour, because what Lee Cronin is, he's multidiscipline, right? He works in computers, biology, chemistry. He's got all of these fields under his belt and dabbles in even a bit of philosophy. So it's very hard for him to go for Tour to go outside of his field, which is just chemistry. So when you get into something like assembly theory, which is multidisciplinary, it covers engineering and computing. I'm not familiar with it, but boy, do I want to read on it now. I really want to read on it now. When you go to this sort of a multidiscipline theory, he probably felt a bit out of his depth, which is unusual for Tour because he's so versed in chemistry. But Cronin's explaining this in a way that says, hey, we don't need to form a cell phone from raw copper. There is a process that we go through, like an evolution that we go through, that forms all of these things, and we don't know some of these processes. We don't know what smelts the copper, say, into copper bars, right? We don't know that process, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. And he's got a good point.
Yeah, it fundamentally boils down to Behe's argument, the mousetrap is irreducibly complex.
Yep.
Well, if you start with the mousetrap and assume that nothing else can happen, you have to go straight to a mousetrap, but that's not how things actually work. But also, I really enjoy, I personally very much believe that interdisciplinary science is our fastest way to the future, because while we do get some really good research out of specialists, and specialists are absolutely important because they delve deep into specific fields. Erica Gutzik-Gibbon is constantly referencing how when she needs to know something about hip bones, there's a specialist for that she will talk to, or vertebra, there's a specialist for that. Specialists absolutely play a very important role in all of the sciences. But there's also a lot to be said for not so much generalists, but cross-disciplinary people.
Yes.
I've mentioned before that there was a problem in atmospheric science dealing with negative pressures, because there was this understanding that you can't have negative pressure. You can only get to zero pressure, which is in outer space. Yeah. But then there's people in fucking, what is it, tree science, arborology? That's probably not right, but you get the idea. They've known for over a century that you can generate negative pressure in the xylem of larger trees, like the redwoods and the giant the other big trees. My meat brain is malfunctioning. I'm having aphasia.
That's okay.
But yeah, they generate negative pressure in order to suck water up greater distances. And there was people in atmospheric sciences saying that's impossible, and we've known how to do it for over 100 years, and they just didn't know because they don't talk to each other. So cross-discipline it's huge. It's a big deal, and it needs to happen more. And
it's really interesting, actually, the way that current sciences are going, because coding courses are included with every single science discipline. I'm not sure if you know this, or almost every single science discipline, because Cronin wrote that programming software in order to sort of do chemical sort of calculations. But the problem is that if you train someone just in programming, sure, they can program basic stuff, no problem. But there's no way they can't understand the discipline. So they can't program anything from that discipline, because you need to understand the discipline to do so. So these programming-based experts in that field have to exist, because we need to be able to make the tools in order to analyze things. But somebody not in the field can't make the tools because they don't know what they need. It's this weird paradigm where we have to give people a way to create the operating systems and the applications for that field, but it has to come from that field. It's this very strange place. So, and universities and colleges and everything recognize this. They've said, hey, that's what we need from now on. Academia isn't this thing that, they sit in rooms with smoke and they never change kind of thing. They actually really are adaptable with what industry and what the requirements of sort of humanity needs. And I kind of agree with the philosopher that there's probably a bit more funding into humanities. I think philosophy really got, like, when the pandemic hit, they cut everything to the humanities and arts. They really did. It was just, we will need infrastructure and this engineering stuff and STEM and science. They absolutely cut everything, which was a shame. It was a shame. So I hope that rectifies itself, because arts are important too. It's just that STEM, they really are solving some incredible problems. So I think that Tour dodged a lot. A lot of these questions, he was not willing to commit, and it really showed. He came across as, oh, well, I wouldn't know what to do with the money. Look, I don't care what you say. Just say something. Even if you said, hey, we should give it to orphans. Well, weird idea, but sure, at least that's something. Not, well, it wouldn't be up to me. Well, if it were up to you, what would you do with the money? Oh, well, I couldn't decide. I don't. Come on, man. And then Cronin answered that question. He said, hey, we've got to have some of these simulations to find out how to work them. And he went into detail about what he would do. Like, seriously, you can't have a dodge like that and then your opponent come in and answer the question. You look terrible. So I don't know if this was an official debate, but holy crap, did Tour do badly. Like, really badly. Yeah. But have you got any other thoughts? I think that sort of sums it up for me. It was interesting. I like to see a debate where, someone is being absolutely wonderful and intelligent and measured and just giving really, really well thought out answers. So I do appreciate Lee Cronin for that.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is actually one of my favorites, because a lot of times we go into these things thinking, it'll be fun to dunk on Tour or Craig or whatever, and we'll applaud the occasional quip from Hitchens or Sean Carroll or so forth. But in this case, not only did we get to highlight how Tour's an asshat, which I think most people know anyway, but we got to shine a spotlight on a person that people may have heard the name of but don't really know, Lee Cronin. And like, hey, look at this dude. He's not the greatest the world has ever seen, but he's doing things the way you like to see them done. He's got the right attitude, and he's interested in things, and he wants to spread that interest around, and it's like, that's exactly what you want to see. And we get to, like, put a spotlight on him too and be like, this isn't just bad, here's some good, I really like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And he took a couple of swipes at Tour's behavior. I think they were well deserved though. I think he sort of, his more unhinged, like, let's face it, unhinged ranting deserves a couple of swipes. But he did it in a way that was sort of humorous and sort of, off the cuff, so it wasn't looking like he was being mean. I don't think he was being mean. He was just sort of pointing out, hey, we don't have to be yelling at one another. Like, we don't have to, we can work together to solve these problems. And I think it's so gracious. I loved it. But I'm gonna run my banner, because I'm gonna run it early, as I remember, because it's actually really long now. So thank you everybody for supporting the channel. It is so good to have you back, Amber. I can't tell you how good it is. I know that you might not be great with compliments, but I really am. I really am happy for you to be here. I've really missed your presence and your calmness and your humor over the last few weeks. And I realize I'm going on and on, but I really did miss that. I really enjoy having you around when I do these. Not that I don't enjoy any of the other co-hosts that have been on in the meantime, but this was great. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too. I've missed these a lot. It's one of the things that's been rough about being away, and I hope I can stick around, but like I said earlier, I did no idea what the future holds at this point. But at least we got to do today, and that's sort of
exactly.
That's sort of the thing, is like with life. Do what you can with today, because you never really know what tomorrow has to offer.
Sure, and I totally understand. Life happens and things happen, and totally understand, absolutely understand. So certainly no pressure. You've got me. If you want to do one on your channel, I'd love to do that. That'd be awesome. If you are here next week, that would be wonderful. But yeah, if there's anything else I can do to help, please do let me know. I'm would love to help, and I have been plugging you while you've been. I don't know if you've noticed, you've been in my chat. I've been sort of,
yeah. I've tried to touch base when I can, because it's if I can't be involved, at least I can watch. They're still fun to watch, Yeah,
you can still hustle from the sidelines. Sure.
Yep.
Yeah,
heckle a little
Big Bad
bit.
Mama does that all the time. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for being here, and thanks for all the support. Robin, I'm looking in your direction. Thank you so much. Everyone's been amazing. And I'll have something for you next week. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next week, to be honest with you. I might do the evolution one between Jen and Sai-10, because and Amy kind of thing. That might be fun, because Jen's always a laugh. Amy's always awesome, and Sal Cordova and Jen is just such a fantastic combination. Like, seriously, I expect a lot of surprises from that one, and a lot of hilarious moments, because some of the way Amy has of when somebody says something that doesn't quite make sense, Amy can just like highlight it, and it's just, it becomes hilarious. Oh yeah, because I think it's that the combination of her cheeky grin and sort of her accent is just, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, I see where you're coming from. But yeah, this has been fantastic. So I'll have something for you next week. Join us next week. It might be on Embers, for all we know. Ooh, wouldn't that be cool? No pressure, Ember. No pressure, mate. But yeah, thank you so much. And don't forget to be kind to yourself. And be kind to the scientists that are working, even if they fail. And if you fail, be kind to yourself. It's okay. We all are going to fail, and we just, keep going and try not to fail the next time round. So be kind to yourself when it does happen. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be something that sort of improves your character, or you learn from. So don't be mean to yourself. Everybody fails. And be kind to each other, because you don't want to be James Tour yelling incoherently at people about cluelessness and zero. Can we have the soundbite, please? I'm begging you. There you go. That's not kind. But thank you all so much, and yeah, take care.